Hello, my name is Daryl O'Sullivan, and I'm the treasurer of the Western Neuropathy Association. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to day 2 of the 2022 Annual Conference. This year, we have expanded to 3 hours each day. The entire conference is a webinar, so you will not see other videos, other people, except for the presenters and what the presenters provide as videos. To communicate with the presenters, please use the chat button and the Q&A to enter questions or comments. There will be a survey at the close of today when the conference ends, and we really appreciate your participation in filling out the survey. And we will have breaks throughout the conference. As you know, we all need to stretch our legs, move around because of our neuropathy. So I want to take this time to recognize and dedicate the 2022 Annual Conference to Bev Anderson. Bev is the co-founder of Western Neuropathy Association. She's been the president and charismatic leader for many years. She constantly has reached out to help those suffering from peripheral neuropathy, and many of you have actually talked with her on the phone and felt this wonderful effort by her. She constantly researched every resource available to find ways to help reduce pain and increase our quality of life. She dedicated herself to help us and to those who care for us. Although Bev is ill and although Bev's illness has resulted in her stepping down as president, her legacy continues to inspire us all. Thank you, Bev, for all that you do for us. At this point, we'll be changing the screen and hearing a message from Bev, but I'd like to also introduce Pam Hart, Western Neuropathy director, who's been with the Western Neuropathy Association for over 10 years. Pam, would you like to say a few things?
Sure, thank you, Daryl, and welcome everyone to day 2 of our annual conference. So glad so many people could join us today. I was privileged to go up and interview Bev and record her greeting to you for this conference. She is just recovering from a stroke, and so she doesn't have all of her facilities available to her right now, but she wanted to be part of this conference, and she wanted you to understand that she hasn't been able to reach out to people with cards or emails or anything. She's just learning how to read again. She's actually teaching herself how to read. She was a teacher, and so she has all of the materials at home still to teach herself how to read. So with that, I'd like to ask Daryl to please share a message from Bev.
Okay.
Greetings. Hi there, everybody. Sort of good to be out and about and know that I'm talking to you. Really good thing. And I'm so glad that the Neuropathy Association, the Western Neuropathy Association, is going forward and doing well and having a conference and being ready to talk to each of you about neuropathy. And I'm going to tell you about what's happened to me. One of the things that happened, I was just going to take to a doctor's appointment. I got out of the car and walked to get, and fell over an old-fashioned thing that's used to drive a car to, and it was hidden in the grass and just a little piece of metal, and I fell over it. And I lay there for a little bit, and people gathered, and they thought I should see a doctor, called an ambulance. And when I got to the hospital, in the ambulance, they decided I needed to be admitted. They didn't give me this, the medication I needed for my neuropathy and my heart concerns. And I had a stroke because of it. A stroke that pretty much took away my ability to talk and to to read and that kind of thing. Communication skills were really damaged. And then I sent to a different hospital that started taking care of my neuropathy and taking care of my heart concerns so that I didn't have any more strokes. And they cared for me and got me started. And then they sent me to a care home in between. So I had 3 major surgeries, one after another. I had the surgery, go into the hospital, and then they'd send me to a care home. And the care homes, the home I went to the first 2 times. So I was in the hospital for 3 months from the first week of May, from the first week of June to the last week of August till I finally got home. And all this time I was being watched by my wonderful grandson, who's been taking care of my financial affairs and by any business I had to deal with, and making sure I had people to take care of me. And I had a friend and her who is a LVN and retired LVN. So she's been keeping an eye on me, and her husband had been a caregiver part of the time when she was working as a LVN, as a caregiver as a caregiver, actually, a lot of time caregiving that she did. So I've been taking care of it. Now my doctor has given me permission to be on my own pretty much, so that my grandson comes, used to be once a week, now it's about every 2 weeks. And my caregivers are available. They take me to the doctor sometimes, but getting a ride to the doctor is the biggest thing that I have. I live a little bit out a ways, and getting somebody willing to drive like that with the cost of gas now. But I've been home now since the end of August, and even now, I'm not quite back to getting to be even using my computer that much. I'm hoping to get my computer skills built up, and we've got some things that's supposed to help me with that. But at 86, I think I'm time to retire. It's time to retire, so I'm not continuing and can't continue to be the president of the Western Neuropathy Association. So I have tendered my resignation, which had been sort of understood anyway, but it's official that I'm no longer the president of the Western Neuropathy Association. And there will be other people that will be stepping forward. And we have people coming in from other states that, because the board is not totally online, they have all their meetings on computer. So there's people from various different states involved. So little by little, this organization may go national. The Western Neuropathy Association covers the entire country because it's part of the Western Hemisphere. So, and anything that can be done anywhere can be done as part of the Western Neuropathy Association, because, even around the world. So I'm very glad for all of you that are continuing in your membership and continuing to help me support this wonderful group of people that have stood forward and taken a leadership role. So encourage them. Join if you're not officially a member right now. $30 a year, you can manage together and keep this going, because there are more and more people that have neuropathy around the world, and in the United States, and in California, Oregon, Nevada, and Texas. So beyond that is a way to go too. So thank you so much for all you've done. And I just appreciate you so much. And I hope you have a great conference together. And this message can go to people beyond that, that there are still people out there with neuropathy. And there's so many people that need so much information. So go for it and be the wonderful people that you are. Thank you so much. Greetings.
So thank you, Pam, for sharing this wonderful video. So I'd like to start the conference today by going over the schedule. So today we will have a summary of Dr. Hammock's research. And that'll happen just about in a few minutes. And then we'll do some stretches and have some door prizes. And then at noon, Glen, one of the directors, will talk about tools for patient advocacy. And then again, we'll have another door prize and another stretch that'll help get you, blood flowing and things. And then at 1, John Phillips, our newest director, will talk about patient stories. And then after another series of door prizes, we will be ending the conference. But please remember at the end of the conference to fill out the survey. And also, while each speaker is talking, please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A. And if you need to make sure that something is happening, go through the chat system to do that. Okay. So I would like at this time to introduce. Well, before we do that, let me just skip back here for a minute, if you don't mind, for just a second, Glenn. I'd like to introduce first Lindsay. So Lindsay can talk about some of the things that are going on in terms of the administrative activities. So Lindsay Kampai is our administrative assistant for Western Neuropathy and has been working with the association for over 6 years. And she's helping today with all the Zoom information and monitoring and the attendance and all the questions and things that are going on. So Lindsay, if you're on, I'd like to get you to talk about fundraising.
So today you'll see me a few different times. We'll talk about fundraising in a little bit, but like Daryl just said, we're in a Zoom webinar. So of course you guys can use the chat and the Q&A function at the bottom. If you have any questions, either for us at WNA, or if you have any questions for our guest speakers, you can put those in there and we'll address those at the very end of the presentation. And just to keep in mind that we're recording all of the presentations for both days of conference, and we will work on getting those recordings available probably by the end of next week. And we'll send a reminder email out to everybody on how to access those. So if you have any questions for anybody, feel free to pop those in, and we'll go ahead and get started with Glenn.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Okay. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Glen Crosston. Dr. Crosston is from the University of California, Davis. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Ecosis. I'll have him actually pronounce that better than I did. He has over 25 years of experience managing the development of drugs from ideas to clinical use. Ecosis is the organization co-founded by Dr. Hammock to develop a potent inhibitor to the soluble epoxide hydroxylase as a much needed new non-opiate pain drug. And many of us have already heard much of this, but this is very important because it is a non-opioid drug. The new drug has completed 2 phase 1A clinical studies showing no drug-related adverse events in humans. Ecosis is now working to advance the drug's clinical development this year with a phase 1B MAD study, followed by a phase 2 study testing pain relief in chronic pain patients in 2023 and 2024. If successful, the new drug will help fill the vast need for safer non-opioid pain drugs, helping millions of people with pain, including all of us suffering from peripheral neuropathy. So without any, it's my pleasure to introduce Glen. Glen, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and let you have control of it.
Sure, thanks, Daryl. And I am bringing my slides up.
Okay.
And let's see if I go to, try that. Oh, there we go. How's that look?
That looks great.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me and thanks for the introduction. As Daryl said, I'm going to give you a quick overview about Ecosis and where we're at with our development program. And maybe it sounds like some of you have heard the story before, so I apologize in advance if this is old news to you, but hopefully there'll be some new things here too for everyone. And I'm sure this isn't really news to any of you, but pain is a huge problem for millions of people globally, hundreds of millions of people, including neuropathic pain. In diabetic neuropathy, for example, over 4 million people in the US who are sufferers of diabetic neuropathy pain, and as well as other painful chronic pain conditions like osteoarthritis, with an estimated over 20 million patients in need of new drug solutions. So despite the huge need, and once again, I'm sure this isn't news to many of you, but despite the huge need, there really aren't great solutions today. There are drugs, of course, like NSAIDs, but these do have side effects for a lot of folks. Over 50% of people don't tolerate them very well because of bleeding, GI bleeding, and other problems. And although there are approved drugs, that they all come with some big side effects, significant limitations, including sedation, GI side effects, or addiction. And opioids, although they are broadly used, we all know the problem there with, even with the pandemic, with the opioid epidemic has continued to rise. So, there's certainly a huge need here, a need for something new, and that's what we're working to fill at Ecosis. And to kind of explain quickly, what our approach is, that we're looking at a regulatory lipid pathway, and I'm not going to get into all the details for now, but there are 3 pathways which are related, 2 of which are sort of broadly known, which are the COX and LOX pathway, which cause pain and inflammation. And we have our pathway on the right-hand side, which is analgesic and anti-inflammatory. So by accentuating the activity of this right-hand pathway, we can produce analgesia and reduce inflammation. The little graph on the left is just sort of a diagram showing that this is how much has been published about our drug target, about SEH, over time, which is growing and sort of continuing to build this body of evidence saying that this could be an important new route to fight neuropathic pain. A little more detail there. We're not going to have to look at the structures or whatnot, but just a cartoon to kind of look at the pathway up close. That there are these epoxy fatty acids that are in the middle here, or EPFA, which are signaling lipids that block pain and inflammation. And then there's this enzyme, which we're targeting here, our drug target, which when we block it, we can increase the signaling by these epoxy fatty acids in the body to help relieve pain and fight inflammation. So Bruce and his team and many other collaborators over the years and even decades have been studying the enzyme, learning more about what it does, and even trying to develop drugs which can block this enzyme and treat pain. And here's just one example of some data which has been published with from Dr. Hammock and others looking at neuropathic pain. And this isn't rodents, so not the clinic, but on the left-hand side showing, as the bars get bigger, showing that our drug is relieving pain and doing so very potently. So compared to other drugs, diclofenac, which is an NSAID, or gabapentin or pregabalin, saying that we have very, very potent and efficacious relief of pain in this rodent model. And I'm not going to go through, I won't go through the details here, but just to say this is another type of neuropathic pain in rodents again, where instead of a diabetic neuropathy, this is a nerve injury type of pain. And seeing on the left, for example, that with our drug, with 5026, we see a very prolonged relief of pain in the animals and a more efficacious relief of pain than with pregabalin. So, we've done this in a variety of different rodent models, seeing that we relieve pain, but of course, rodents, people often criticize rodent models saying that, it's humans aren't like rats, we're different, right? I mean, it's hard to say how that's going to work in humans. So one thing that we've done that maybe, there's a lot of different people pursuing a lot of different paths for pain relief. And one thing that we've done to try to make ourselves more confident about what we're doing or what we're seeing in terms of pain relief is to look at other animals. So for example, dogs. This data is with dogs which were aging and where dogs naturally often develop osteoarthritis. And so within this, and because this is sort of a more naturally occurring type of disease setting, type of pain, we're hopeful that this might be more relevant for the pain that humans experience, that people have, that patients have. And we're very encouraged to see efficacy, not just in rodents, but in these aging dogs as well that suffer this natural disease. And then going on to another animal, horses. So there's a very painful condition that horses have called equine laminitis, which is basically severe inflammation of the hoof. So it hurts so much the horse can't get up. So for example, on the left there, this is a thoroughbred whose name was Hula Hala, which was suffering laminitis on their side, couldn't get up, and it was severe enough that these horses, if they can't get up, they'll usually they won't last very long. So this horse wasn't going to make it, and within a day of treatment with one of Dr. Hammock's compounds, the horse was already getting up, and after a week made a full recovery, which is really dramatic. After these horses had failed all of the treatments, Hula Hala and several other horses went on to have dramatic recoveries. And that right there is something which I think has gotten a lot of people pretty excited about what we're trying to do, and encouraged to say that if we can treat natural disease in these animals, in dogs and horses, that we're encouraged that it hopefully is going to work in people too. And this is just to illustrate that, to say, from left to right, treating pain in rodents, not just in rodents, but also in dogs, cats, and horses. That, if we can do all that, we're encouraged that as we move further into the clinic, that our drugs should also work in humans as well. And that's what we're trying to do. Of course, that's our end game here. That's our overall goal, is trying to help people. Now, as we were saying earlier, that there are other drugs like opioids, but there are also problems with those drugs. Despite their efficacy, they do relieve pain, but often with sedation or addiction. So we want a drug that's different, that doesn't have those properties. And there are ways in animals of trying to test that. This is kind of an example of data saying that while other drugs have either sedation or can produce addiction because it produces this sort of euphoric feeling in the animals, as it does in humans, that the animals start seeking after, that we don't do that. Our drug seems to be devoid of that. So, there's no evidence that it will produce any sort of addiction as we progress down the road. It should be a big differentiator for what we're doing compared to other drugs. And to kind of summarize, where we're at in preclinically, that and how we compare to other approaches to pain, that we feel like we have a unique approach which has shown strong efficacy in a variety of settings, including neuropathic pain, but without all the side effects. Once again, without the side effects. This is all published, but without the GI side effects of NSAIDs, without the sedation of gabapentin and other drugs like that, without the sedation or addiction of opioids. And at this point, that in addition to the evidence that we've seen in animals, that we have proven safety in multiple clinical trials, both with our drug or other related drugs. So this all supports us moving forward and trying to demonstrate clinically that we are both safe and that we're relieving pain in animals. Of course, that's a kind of a long road, and along the way, people have also often asked, and looking at other drug approaches, people are often encouraged by genetics. They want to know, how do we know this drug's going to work in people? Another way of approaching that problem is to say, are there any genetics in humans, which relate what you're doing to pain? And we do see that we see, for example, and this is data this has been our gene, the SEH gene, has been linked to a variety of clinical outcomes, including recently pain in osteoarthritis patients, in which we see variations in the gene are correlated with both pain and with biomarkers in these patients. So that's also very supportive of the idea that as we progress, makes us hopeful that we're going to see our approach hopefully pay off and relieve pain in patients down the road. This is our drug lead in the clinic. It's called EC5026. And Bruce and Dr. Hammock and his team and Icosis have over the years made a lot of these drugs which target our enzyme, our drug target SEH, over 3,000 different drugs, which have been synthesized and tested preclinically over the years, ultimately arriving at this drug 5026, and which from many perspectives, I need a lot of preclinical work looking at it in many different ways, as really great properties for an oral drug. Because of course that's our approach is to try to develop an oral medication, something that we can take in as a pill, hopefully once a day, would be the easiest approach for patients. And it looks like the evidence is, as I'll show in the next slide, it looks like all the evidence so far says that, yeah, looks like we can do that. So 5026 is in the clinic, and this is some of the results from our first clinical study, which is what they call a SAD study. SAD means single ascending dose. So patients get a single dose of the drug of 5026, and then we monitor them for any sort of adverse events. We want to see that the drug is safe. And sure enough, we saw going up to a single dose of 24 milligrams, no drug-related adverse events were observed. So that's very encouraging. As our VP of clinical likes to say, it was a very, very boring clinical trial, but in a good way, because sometimes no news is good news. Nothing bad happened here. And this study is not designed to look at efficacy yet. These are healthy volunteers. So we're just trying to make sure the drug is safe and try to chart out, that the drug is absorbed, that it's in their blood, and that by having it in the blood, we're reassured as we progress that we hopefully will be having the desired efficacy. So moving on, I should also say we've done, since the original study, we've done what we call a fed-fasted study with a tablet formulation. Also saw no drug-related adverse events in the fed-fasted study. We have the tablet formulation, and the plan is this year that we are going to move forward into what they call a phase 1B study, which is multiple ascending doses in healthy volunteers, but also in this case in chronic pain subjects. So looking at a variety of things. Once again, mainly we're looking still at safety to make sure we don't see anything bad happen, no adverse events. But as we also test our drug in pain subjects and repeat dosing once a day for 7 days, we'll start to collect data on other things, including analgesia. And if we're fortunate, maybe we'll see analgesia. We'll see some activity even in these early small studies. So this is planned. Starting later this year, and it is very exciting because it includes not just healthy volunteers, but also OA and diabetic neuropathy patients. And this is kind of a big overview of where we're at clinically, and where we're going over the next couple of years. In the chart, in the table, going down from the top, we have as I mentioned, the first study, which was a SAD study, followed by the fed-fasted study we just completed. We're just looking at safety, but so far so good. Everything looks great. We are seeing no drug-related adverse events. Our MAD study, which is planned to start soon, including not just healthy volunteers, but also pain subjects, and starting to collect data on analgesia, on pain relief in a small number of people. Another study, which is going to be starting soon, is in a different type of pain, in spinal cord injury patients, supported by a grant we got from the DoD, working with collaborators at the VA. We're hoping to start to collect data, exploratory data on safety as well as analgesia in this other patient group as well, which is once again badly needed. There are not great solutions for this type of pain either. Looking down the road, if all goes well, within maybe about a year or so from now, that we can start our phase 2 studies, and that's where we really start to look at efficacy with larger number of patients. To really see if the drug's going to work or not, we need to look at probably a couple of hundred patients in these studies. So that's a bigger effort, which is going to take. We have other steps we have to go through in order to get there first, and it's going to take some money to make that happen. But if all goes well, maybe within a couple of years or so, that we'll start to really have a good understanding about how well our drug works in patients, including neuropathic pain patients. So that's the plan that we're working on, that we're executing towards in terms of pain relief. And I just wanted to mention too that on top of treating pain, that given all there's a huge body of science that Bruce and other hundreds of papers people have published, many in other areas as well. So not just pain, but we have the potential to try to treat other important unmet needs, including Alzheimer's, chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer, all of which there's really kind of great data supporting these efforts as well down the road as time and money permit. And this is the team. Of course, we couldn't make it happen with a whole bunch of other folks. Drug development is a team effort. So Bruce, our founder, and Cindy, our co-founder and our director of research, and Bill Schmidt, our VP clinical, myself, and Bob Gregoire, a very experienced businessman, and all here in Davis, and continuing to drive our project forward, and hopefully, if successful, to be able to help a lot of people out there. So that's in a nutshell my story, our story. Hopefully I didn't go too quickly there, but that's, I think, in a nutshell where we're at today. And of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, or certainly to thank you again for the opportunity to be here and to speak with you all. Thank you.
Yeah, Glenn, we really appreciate your presentation and the information and the update on how this drug is progressing through the trials and how we hope it will be effective for those suffering from all kinds of pain, and of course, particularly for us, for neuropathic pain. So at this time, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the question and answers in the chat area and ask the questions that are showing up there so that you can perhaps try to address them. And so let's see here. We'll start off with the first question I have is, will this drug be appropriate for people who are allergic to NSAIDs?
Well, yeah, our mechanism is entirely different. So, I would think so. If we show that we're efficacious, that there should be no really allergic reaction with our drug. It has a different structure, different mechanism, and I would expect that we would be able not to have that problem.
Okay, the next one is erythromelalgia, I think, or Malaysia is a rare neurovascular disease, and it is not uncommon for people with this disease to also have peripheral neuropathy. Erythromelalgia has a different kind of pain since there is a vascular component. Could this medication possibly also help people with erythromelalgia pain?
Well, we don't have any data that I know of specific to that condition. I would say that our approach does have a connection with vascular health, where our enzyme is expressed in the vasculature and is what they call a vasorelaxant. So it tends to relax vessels. Been shown in rodents at least to reverse high blood pressure, for example, as a result of this, to improve vascular health, endothelial health. So I don't have any specific data about that painful condition, but I think there's reason to suggest that it might be interesting to look at.
Okay, so the next one is, how does this compare to Tramadol?
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I mean, Tramadol is an opioid, and I just recently saw some data published about the difficulties of patients treated with Tramadol, and all the variety of side effects. So we would expect to provide a valuable alternative. Hopefully, one reason we have got, for example, been funded to a large extent by the government through grants to develop an alternative to opioids. And including things like Tramadol. So, we would be non-sedating and non-addictive and hopefully provide, great pain relief without all those side effects.
Okay. The next one is the SEHI decreases the inflammation and that reduces the pain, ? How did that cure the horse's disease?
Yeah, okay, great question. So, in our enzyme, our drug target is increased with inflammation. And what they found in the reason they even started looking at the horse, at the condition, at laminitis in the horse, was that they saw that this drug target was increased in the horse's hoof when they developed this painful condition. And that gave them reason to think that maybe by inhibiting that, by blocking that enzyme, that maybe they could help to relieve the inflammation and the pain. And that's what we've seen in a lot of other conditions as well, that, as pain and inflammation go up and as the expression of this enzyme target goes up, and by blocking it, they can make things go back down.
Does that mean that the horse will continue to take the medication indefinitely?
No, probably. I mean, there's no reason to think that. And, for the laminitis, at least, it looks like it's kind of an acute condition. And that once these horses have been treated, that they're done,
Okay.
the condition is resolved. Things like that. Sometimes when you have chronic inflammation, what we're hoping is that if you can just sort of block that chronic inflammation and resolve it, help it to kind of get back to normal, that maybe the condition will resolve and you won't need treatment after that. We would hope.
Okay. The next one is, I've tried gabapentin and Lyrica, didn't work. My toes are now curling. I guess that neuropathy I'm trying I'm trying nervy. I'm not sure what that question really is. I guess is how will this, I guess the question basically is, will this be better than gabapentin and Lyrica?
Oh, we sure hope so. Yeah, I mean, I know that the gabapentinoids, although they're approved, that they don't work for everyone, and when they do work, they often have a lot of side effects. A lot of sedation, for example, and that a lot of people can't continue with or choose not to continue with the drugs because of the side effects. So, and so far we see, like I said, we see no sedation, and you can even see this in rodents. If you give the rodents gabapentin, that they look sedated. They're not moving the same way. Even in the rodents, they're impacted by these drugs. They have the same sort of things going on that we do. And we see no evidence of that so far, including in patients, so we have dosed in humans now, right? And we see in phase 1, at least, we're not looking at efficacy, but we see no sign of sedation.
Okay. I can tell you personally, if I take gabapentin, and I have for many years, it works very well for me, but it doesn't actually get rid of all the pain. It just reduces it to a bearable amount. So
Sure.
Yeah. So the next one is, need any volunteers for the phase 1B trial?
Yeah, well, I mean, when we run the study, it's going to be small, and it'll be at like a single center or 1 or 2 centers, which are probably going to be either in Pasadena or in Texas.
Okay.
So if any of you are in Pasadena or Texas, that could be, something that you could look into.
Yes. The person who asked you this, yes, I'm in Houston, but I know that you did your other study in Austin. So is that what you're thinking?
Well, there's 1 or 2 sites, and I'm not sure yet which one it would be. I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Well, we'll be interested to know, and if you do it to Texas, we can get you plenty of people.
Oh,
well, I can tell you that across the entire organization, there are plenty of people who would volunteer.
Who would volunteer?
All over the United States, I'm sure.
Sure, yeah. So we'll see. And there's only going to be in the phase 1B, there's for diabetic neuropathy, there's going to be 12 patients enrolled, and there's lots of, there's a big process involved in going through that. But, we'd love to stay in touch, of course, and let everybody know how that's going.
Yeah. Now there's some more questions related to gabapentin, but I think they're all basically the same. So I'm going to go on to another one. I understand I developed it because of my diabetes, and this has to do with their neuropathy. So, you also mentioned some testing or some results related to diabetic neuropathy pain. And so this particular, I would sort of summarize again how this drug will be effective in that regard.
Sure. Yeah, a couple of things. One is, of course, treating the pain itself, and which we think is, and so when people have diabetes, that they have elevated blood sugar, and that this sugar over time can damage the nerves, the cells, the neurons, which are involved in pain, in transducing that pain signal, and which lead to this pain, this chronic pain. And what we see is that we can, I think, both reverse that damage to the neurons to try to protect and not just block the pain, but also helpfully protect the tissues and reverse some tissue damage. And a separate note that we have, at least in animals, we've seen also that we can treat metabolic disease, including diabetes, that we have some efficacy there, it seems. So maybe we can even help to address some of the underlying problems which lead to the condition in the first place.
Okay. So I've got a series of questions here. So first we'll start off with, how long does it have a therapeutic effect at current identified safety doses?
Well, of course, that's a great question. I mean, in people, we don't know yet. We know that our drug has a long half-life. Single dose lasts for, at least a day, if not longer. And so we'd expect a single dose would be enough to provide pain relief for at least a day or so.
Okay. After administration, how long does it take to have an effect in humans?
Oh, well, that's a big question, so I can't say for sure yet, because we're still waiting to do that experiment, from people who are experienced in the field, so our Bill Schmidt, our VP clinical, anticipating that within a week that we would see efficacy, you know, and that if we don't see efficacy in a week, that maybe that it's just not working, you know. So that's kind of our initial guess is that it would be within a week, maybe faster. You know, if we're fortunate, maybe even faster than that within the next first few days, or maybe the first, but we don't know yet, you know, exactly how long that's going to take.
Based upon relaxation of blood vessels, is there a contraindication in heart failure patients?
You know, we haven't seen that, you know, at least based pre-clinically, you know, is that we are vasorelaxant, but that's kind of depending on the patient and what they're, you know, and their given pathology. If somebody is overly vasoconstricted, it seems as though we can relax that back to like a normal state, but not that we cause kind of a global vasorelaxation, you know, beyond that normal healthy physiology. So far it looks, you know, it doesn't look like that would be an issue.
Okay. Does your drug have a similar mechanism to L-arginine?
I don't know. I mean, I think that I wouldn't say it's the same, maybe related. I mean, that I think that arginine, you know, as I recall, is kind of helps to induce like what they call NO, you know, which is a signaling molecule, and which I don't know if I'd have to look and see if we've ever actually done that experiment. I know they are both connected to like endothelial, you know, vascular health, and that I imagine they would be what they call synergistic, that the two different mechanisms would work together, but I don't recall. I'd have to look it up. I'd have to go look it up, you know, and I'm not sure off the top of my head how that would interact.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in here and say L-arginine tends as a supplement to work along the nitrous oxide pathway to produce vasodilation. From what Glenn is saying here, Glen C is saying, I believe that the pathway is probably different, but in actual effect and mechanism, you may wind up having a very similar effect and perhaps a synergistic effect.
Yeah, I think so. I think that sounds, I agree.
Okay, the next one is, are there any drugs that can't be used with this at the same time?
Well, not that we know of at the moment. And we're anticipating, for example, in the MAD study that we're allowing the pain subjects to continue on whatever medication they're on currently. You know, and so we're not anticipating that we have, in fact, we know that we synergize with NSAIDs. And not only does our drug not cause the GI side effects, but we actually block the NSAID GI side effects and synergize with NSAIDs, make them work even better. So, you know, and we have some data about opioids where it looks like we can also, you know, add our efficacy on top of that as well. So not that we know of, it looks like at the moment, you know, that we would be, not only can you probably do both, but maybe even you would have more pain relief with the combination.
Okay. The last one I have on here is, how would it help someone with spinal cord injury?
Wow, you know, well, I guess that's what we're going to see with our VA collaboration, right? Is that these are, you know, people who we're going to try to treat those spinal cord injury patients and see what happens. And, you know, the hope being that you know, that this is another form of nerve injury, right? Which is a different type of neuropathic pain, and that that at the molecular level, at the cellular level, that we can help those neurons to heal and stop sending out those pathological pain signals over time.
Okay. Glenn, you had something?
No, there's one more question, actually another couple of questions over in the Q&A now. That
Oh, okay.
So, one of them is, any contraindication with lymphedema, which is a good question.
I don't, wow, okay, yeah, not that I know of. I don't really know the answer to that one. That one's got me stumped. I would have to check and see. But I guess the short answer is not that I know of.
Okay. So that last question that's on here, excuse me. Do you have any comment about Nervo and Medtronic's neuropathic implants?
Oh, wow. So it's not my field. I can't really comment specifically on that. I mean, I've seen really great data. You know, it looks exciting. I've seen, you know, really exciting looking data from some of these other approaches, including including with with the implants and other such device related approaches. So I would say that these also look really exciting. Of course, there's people pursuing a variety of approaches for pain, and some of them are pharmaceuticals, but some of these other approaches also look really exciting.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
A couple of things back in the chat now, I think.
Okay.
One of them asking, how would it help someone with a spinal cord injury?
No, we already know.
We already got that
We
one.
already
Oh,
did
I'm
that
sorry.
one.
Yeah. So
Um,
let's see here.
Then are there any other companies doing pain
Yeah.
reduction drug work like your company? I
Yeah.
imagine there are.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, this is, of course, I'm just talking about icosis, but there are many others, right? And pursuing a variety of approaches, different drug targets, and so on. And, with new stuff coming out all the time. And, it is unfortunately, a long pathway to get from, having an idea to getting something all the way in through the clinic to be approved. It takes years and years. But, the good news is that there's still a lot of people working on it academically, scientifically, as well as in the biotech and pharma world with many different approaches. And with all that effort, I'm sure that over time, these things usually pay off.
So just to give us an idea of with the current drug we're talking about, what is the timeline? If everything works well, that we could actually get it prescribed to us.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, from where we stand today, so like I was saying, to complete phase 2 would be, if all goes well, another couple of, let's say 2 years. And then from there to get through phase 3 and, regulatory approval is going to be at least another probably 2 or 3 years on top of that.
So 5 or plus years?
More or less, probably.
Yeah, okay. I just think we need to all be realistic about what's going on in terms of how long it takes and things. At this time, I'd like to say thank you again very much for your presentation and the update on the pain medicine. And we wish that and hope that this all works out fantastically because we all need it. So thank you again for the presentation. Thank you for all that you do to help people that in pain. And we really, as people who suffer from that, from various kinds of pains, we really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
So
thank you for having me.
No, thank you. So I think at this point, we're going to start going back here to the PowerPoint. Let's see where I'm at here. Whoops, that's the wrong one. So let's go back to the PowerPoint itself. Okay, where is it?
What we are going to do is
We're going to have a
we're
door
going
prize,
to do
right?
door prizes.
It's time to give out merch.
But
Exactly.
first, wait a minute. First, before we do door prizes, I want to share something with the group. And Daryl, can you stop a minute so we can come back on in our full views? Okay. So one of the things that the board did this year for neuropathy awareness is we created some little buttons, and they do look kind of little, but and some of the board members have those on today, and there you go. And I do want to thank one of our members came up with this idea. Helene Greenberg came up with this. She said that she was having lunch with some friends. None of them knew that the other one had neuropathy, and all of a sudden with them talking, all of a sudden they found out they each had neuropathy. And so this is, she presented this to me as, we need a way to just start these conversations with people because we don't talk about this enough. So that's what this pin says. And we're going to be sending these out to everybody. And what this pin says is ask about my neuropathy. It's really hard to fit lots of words and letters onto this little pin. And then it has to say WNA on it. And then it has to say Western Neuropathy Association. Believe me, this is not an easy thing to do. Really, you want that pin to be this big. So, and my idea since, when Elaine was talking about it, was it with people that she was close to. So this is going to be something, when you're around your friends and other people where you're having a conversation and somebody can look at your little pin and go, oh, what is that? What is neuropathy? So just so that we can get more awareness. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're doing today. Okay. Now we're going to do door prizes. Okay. So let's just, if you can share your screen again, so we can just get everybody in the mood
There we go.
and remind everybody. Okay, so doing door prizes, we have got the books. We have used probably already, we'll say we've used 9 of the Latov books. So we have 3 left. And we used one of the other Latov books. I think maybe the Numbfoot book. So you're going to have to generally pick from kind of all of these after you win. I'm not going to be pushing the Latov book anymore. Okay, so Daryl, if you can stop, and then I will start sharing the screen so we can spin for some names. And I'll do this full screen. So everybody's name is on here from probably what, yesterday, Lindsay, or something, first day of the conference.
Yep.
And I've taken out the people's names that have already won. So when it comes up to you, we hope. Oh boy, I tell you.
Barbara.
Barbara Crawford. Is Barbara on the
Barbara, are you here? She is. She's on.
She is here. Yay! Okay.
Hey, Barbara.
We'll be going back, and you can look at the books to see which one you want. We'll be going back to that screen. So let's go. I still haven't figured out how, it's supposed to have a random amount of, okay, we didn't stand on the C's. Raphael Felix. I don't know if I saw that one.
Yes, he is here.
Is he here? Oh my God, Raphael. That's awesome. Okay, Raphael. So also we'll be looking back again and one more time. Oh. Marcus, you almost got it. Martin, is Martin Price here today?
I don't see Martin on the list.
No.
Ooh.
Oh, okay, all right. So we'll do one more time. Maybe Marcus will maybe we'll come back to Marcus again, because I know Marcus is here too. All right, let's see. Oh, and
Jackie.
I know obviously Jackie registered, but I don't know if she's showing up.
We have a Jacqueline on. I don't know if that's Jackie Blevins or not.
But is it the last name? What is?
There's no last name.
No last name on this
If
one.
she always goes Jackie Blevins. Yeah.
Okay,
So
so that might be a different Jackie.
all right, so let's go one more time. One more time. Go, go, go. Everybody root for your name. Go, go, go. Go, go, go. Oh, see, look, where camera.
Let's see, Marcus is on
And
too.
Marcus is here.
Marcus got it.
Marcus.
Yay. All right, so I will remove Marcus from here, and I'm going to stop screen share. And Daryl, if you can put yours back up, please.
There you go.
So Barbara, Raphael, and Marcus, if y'all can look at these right now, you can pick any one of them that you want. And if you can send something to us in the chat about which one you want, so that we know.
And also
don't
too,
forget
you
your
can,
address.
yeah, you can, if you don't want to put your address in the chat box, you can also
Okay.
email it to us. So if you're a winner and you want to let us know what book you want, you could also email to me at admin@pnhelp.org. I'll put that in the chat, and you can send us your address and which book you want. And everybody, whether or not you're a winner, you're going to get one of those pins that Catherine was talking about too. So you'll get a little care package.
Yay. Okay, Marcus, thank you. Okay, so we'll give them that.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome.
Woohoo.
Yeah, really. Okay, so now go on to the next one, and we're going to have fundraising.
Woo.
We
And
are.
Lindsay.
Fundraising.
All right. Let's see. I'll put my email here real quick. pnhelp.org. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Lindsay. We saw at the beginning. Thank you again to everybody that's joining us live. As Catherine mentioned, May is Neuropathy Awareness Month. So that's why we like to hold our annual meeting and conference in the springtime each year. We want to draw attention to neuropathy and provide neuropathy sufferers with services, education, and support. So why do we fundraise in the first place? So WNA is a nonprofit public benefit 501c3 corporation. So we rely on financial support of our members and our attendees and donors who support the work and fund what we do. All contributions that we receive, by the way, are tax deductible. So whether you donate a little or a lot, you get to count that as a tax write-off at the end of the year. So our board, our committee members, advisory members, and support group leaders work very diligently and donate their time and their talent to WNA. But we still have organizational, operational, and program expenses that are, just go hand in hand with what we do. The success of implementing our strategic plan and implementing our mission and vision at WNA depends on increasing our revenue each year. So you might ask if you already are a member of WNA and you already contribute your membership dues year to year, what's the point of asking for more money? Why should you donate more? So your membership dues absolutely do make an impact on our total operational costs. But as you'll see, we actually have more costs than are covered by membership dues. We went over this yesterday with our annual meeting too. So you would we can share that with you again too, where you can see that the operational costs outweigh our membership due revenue. So in order to keep things going, keep our lights on, we do need extra support from our members, from support groups, from anybody that's a neuropathy sufferer. We need your help. So I wanted to go over a couple examples of what different levels of a donation can do to support WNA. So if you were able to donate, say, $10 extra, that would support our website platform for about a month. We have to operate the website, update the website, issue newsletter updates, post materials to the website. That all costs money, but $10 even can help us do that for a month. If you were to able to donate, say, $25, that would be able to have us print 200 or so copies of our WNA informational brochure that we send out. If you were able to send $75, that would pay for about 3 months of our phone line that we have available for people to call in for help. And if you were to do something like $250, that would even be enough to help us establish a new support group in your state. So whether it's California, Texas, Nevada, $250 goes a long way for us. And that could even help us get a group going in an area where we might not have one. So thankfully, Daryl, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. We were able to do some fundraising yesterday. And thankfully, because of one of our longtime members, Kathy Clemens, she's the Auburn support group leader, she provided us with a $1,000 donation to be matched. And as of yesterday, at the end of the day, we matched that and more. So at the end of the day, we raised a total of $2,275. We had some very generous donations come through, namely from Texas. So Texas showed up and was able to get us over the top and get us to our goal. So with that in mind, Daryl, go ahead and scoot over one more. I'm going to say we already matched it. Let's keep on going. Let's keep this train rolling. So I'm proposing that we have a new goal of 3,000. So we're very close to that already at the 2275 that we got to yesterday. So 3,000 is the new magic number. So if you were to donate today, there's a couple different ways to do it. If you can't give us your money right now, we can take a pledge. So what we can do is in the chat box, you can send a message to the panelists and hosts with a specific amount that you would like to donate. And this is anonymous, so only us here at WNA can see that. If you want to donate right now, if you have a credit card, we can give you the website in order to get onto our donation site, and you can type in the amount, fill in your credit card details, and send your donation that way, and you'll get an email receipt immediately afterwards. Or if you still like paying by check, we can take your check, and that's our address that you see on the screen. And again, any amount is, means the world to us. So whatever you're able to give we would love to have it. But again, thank you so very much to everybody that was able to donate yesterday. That was incredible. I didn't realize how fast we were going to meet our goal. So I'm really excited to try and push that over the top and keep on going. So 3,000's it. We'll start there today, and then we'll check in a couple of times throughout the day. And at the very end, we'll give a brand new update and see where we're at. So that's it.
Awesome. I just want to say we're already seeing people
I
sending their
know.
pledges in. So thank
Yes.
you very much. We really
Thank you.
appreciate all of that. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to
No,
everybody.
we don't get paid. Well, Lindsay gets paid for this, but the rest of us, we don't get paid. And so we really appreciate to see the money coming in. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So what's next? So next we have
I think next we have
our other group.
Glen. So Glen's going to talk about, Glen Rabotsky is one of our new Western Neuropathy Association directors. And he's going to talk today about tools for neuropathy advocacy. If you weren't here yesterday, if you were here yesterday, you're going to hear a repeat of my introduction. But Glen is a longtime New Yorker. He holds multiple degrees in psychology and counseling from New York University. He was one of the founding premier tutors at Princeton Review and runs his own test prep company, GGG, and provides content consulting services for others. Glen was a founder and longtime co-chair of the Runners Advocacy Organization, New York Road Racing Ombuds Association. His acute onset neuropathic experience in 2003 led him down the path of extensive volunteering and advocacy work for those suffering from neuropathy and other neurologic conditions. He's married, he has a son, his adopted son from Korea. Glen has predilections for Arctic dog breeds and fig Newtons. And I don't blame him, fig Newtons are great. Glen, welcome, and it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much,
You want
Darryl.
me to close off and you can share the screen?
I do, because I'm going to have just another PowerPoint presentation to add to the one we had yesterday.
Yep.
I will warn everybody online that this is sort of going to be like getting a drink from a fire hose, but do bear with it. Basically, what I'm going to talk about in terms of tools for neuropathy advocacy are going to be two different types. And I actually can show you this if I get to share the screen. And I'm able to bring up the PowerPoint presentation, which hopefully you'll all see in a second. But basically, we're a little bit ahead of things over here because I was reviewing it. But here is actually what we're going to be dealing with. It's basically essential websites for neuropathy that everyone should know and love. It's for both self-advocacy, so when you're sitting in a doctor's office, or when you have to deal with insurance companies, or when you have to deal with pharmacies or drugs, basically things that you can use and bring up, whether you want to print them out or have them online. But it's also going to be about advocating for the cause of neuropathy. And obviously that's advocating through organizations such as WNA for increased research or for, more clinical drug trials, and anything that would basically help provide more attention for this particular condition. People who know me, who've heard me talk before, who've seen some of the writings I've done, known that my basic pet peeve is that neuropathy is a condition that is far more prevalent than almost any neurological condition out there. I think the only one that beats it is headache. It's a condition that is not well known for people who don't have it. And of course, even among some people who do have it, which is part of what we're going to talk about today. It's something that needs to be a lot better known both in the medical establishment and in the fundraising establishment. Because if you can say that 1 out of every 15 people in their lifetimes is going to have some form of neuropathy, and yet people don't know about this in the sense that they know about, say, multiple sclerosis, myasthenia gravis, stroke, any one of a number of other conditions, Parkinson's. It's really sad. And while I don't like to treat it as if there's a finite pool of monies and attention out there, obviously neuropathy is not getting its share. So what I will start doing, as I said, is we're going to talk about various different websites that involve diagnostics, types, treatments basically information that anybody who's a neuropathy sufferer or a caregiver or an advocate should know about the condition, basically the state of the art. And then a little bit later, we're going to go into sites for general information and public advocacy. And this is going to include a lot of the organizations that are out there that deal with neuropathy in one way or another. So I will go on and talk a little bit about first this wonderful paper that I actually spoke about in an article that appeared in the WNA newsletter a couple of months back. It's one of the best summaries of neuropathy diagnostics and testing that I know of. It's entitled An Algorithm for the Evaluation of Peripheral Neuropathy. And even though it's now 24 years old, it is such an actual classic paper that you can actually see by the website I've listed here that it is listed in the AAFP. That's the American Association of Family Physicians. That's basically the go-to publication for general practitioners and family physicians. We also call these the Poncelet protocols after Anne Poncelet, the neurologist who actually was the author on this. And as I said, outside of neurology textbooks, it's really become a gold standard guideline for many physicians and neuros for investigating causes of neuropathies. I didn't screenshot this because anyone can access it. It's basically something that you can look at. It has some excellent flow charts in it about what happens if you get negative, positive, or somewhat ambiguous test results and what you should be doing next. And it also has information on different types of neuropathies grouped in various ways, some by onset, whether it's quick or not so quick, some by the types of nerves that are affected. You know, we basically talk a lot in neuropathy world about large fiber versus small fiber versus mixed types of neuropathy. And just for those of you who've not heard that before, these small fiber neuropathies basically involve sensory and autonomic fibers. They're not covered with myelin sheathing. These are basically fibers that subsume sensory-wise the sensations of pain and temperature. The classic small fiber neuropathy is diabetic neuropathy, although there are diabetic neuropathies that affect other types of fibers. But when people start talking about burning toes and burning fingers, that's usually what they're referring to. The larger fibers involve those that do have myelin coverings. Those of you who were here yesterday listening to our presentation from our neurologist got to see basically how that sets up sort of like an electrical cable. These basic nerves involve myelin sheathing for sensory nerves that cover the sensations of positional sense, vibration, mechanical touch, and also all motor nerves. The way those cables tend to be set up is that the sensory fibers tend to be on the outsides of them, and the motor neurons tend to be deeper within, which is why for those neuropathies that sort of have an outside-in approach, you tend to have sensory symptoms earlier and to greater extent than motor symptoms. Although, again, there are neuropathies that attack motor nerves basically preferentially. But this is all available through this paper. And I do tell people you should read it. It's not written in very heavy medicalese, fortunately. It's excellent, because it was actually written for primary physicians, not just neurologists. It's an excellent resource. It's a great thing to print out. It's not terribly long, and bring to doctor's appointments if you feel you're going to need it in a non-neurologist office. Okay, so that's one of them. A second one. This is a very important site for people to know, although it's a lot wonkier than Dr. Poncelet's paper. This is the Washington University at St. Louis Neuromuscular Portal, and you can see the URL here as well. This is, hands down, the most comprehensive database I know of for neuropathic conditions, not just neuropathy, by the way. It's a huge neuromuscular site, and it also deals with anything really that has to do with brain and nerves. I just indicated the subsection here that involves neuromuscular stuff, particularly neuropathy, but it's definitely a huge database you can get lost in forever. It's written in telegraphic medical ease. It's not something that lay people necessarily would have an awful lot of ability to get through, but it's great to actually refer to physicians who should be able to get through more of the language here. It's extremely well organized. I'm actually going to bring up a screenshot from one of the sections here. Hopefully you guys can see this because we had to like cut it down a little bit to get it into the screenshot. This is the differential diagnosis page for neuropathy. And basically you can see they break it down with, hyperlinks by functional involvement, motor, hereditary, pain, small and large fiber, mixed, autonomic, anatomic distribution, because it's not always fingers and toes, time course, often that's acute versus subacute versus long-term, the type of nerves and locations where it happens, some general areas about whether it's axonal affecting the fibers themselves, demyelinating, whether it has a vascular component, and then associated features that come from other areas of medicine. Those that are associated, for instance, with hereditary stuff, those that are associated with metabolic situations, those that are associated with what are called paraneoplastic causes, basically caused by cancerous tumors or the cancers themselves, with renal failure, with respiratory stuff. And then there's a huge laboratory section, which talks a lot about testing, autoantibodies, tests for inflammatory markers, and really it goes on and on and on, including testing for vitamin and nutrition, which is an important but often overlooked cause of neuropathies, by the way. There are definitely vitamin and mineral deficiencies which can lead to neuropathies and should be tested for perhaps more often than they are. But again, although this is the type of site where you could go down the rabbit hole here and spend the month, it's definitely a good one to have as part of your arsenal, particularly if you're going to be talking with neuromuscular specialists in their offices. All right, now to continue on with this, and feel free if people have questions about this, feel free to accumulate them in the Q&A. You can accumulate them in the chats as well. Here is something that's also very important, and it actually goes to a person we've talked a little bit about with the books, Norman Latov. This is a combination paper that Norman wrote, and full disclosure, I actually know Norman. I've had wonderful discussions with him because I have been treated at the Cornell Well Center for Peripheral Neuropathy over the years, which he heads. This is a laboratory diagnostic white paper written for Quest of basically lab tests for peripheral neuropathy. These are the blood tests. It's not necessarily electrodiagnostic. It's not, nerve conduction studies. And what I'll show you here, just so you can get a little bit of an idea of it, this is where it all starts. And this is, far from the total aspect of it, but you can see actually in the how it breaks down. Basically, they have a table of blood tests that should be done for a comprehensive workup. And those are broken down into endocrine and metabolic causes, like obviously diabetes, but also things like thyroid conditions, kidney conditions, nutritional and toxic causes. Obviously, the vitamin deficiencies come in here, but there's a lot of toxicities from heavy metals to industrial chemicals that will induce neuropathies. Immune-mediated causes. Obviously, this is quite a large area. There are autoantibodies to peripheral nerve. There are also other mixed effects from some of the vascular and connective tissue autoantibody conditions like lupus, polyarteritis nodosa, Behçet's disease, scleroderma, and it lists the tests for those. Autoimmune encephalitis, which can result in neuropathies as well. The paraneoplastic neuropathies, monoclonal gammopathies, and primary amyloidosis. These are, of course, conditions where you have a cancer involved. Sometimes the tumor itself will secrete chemicals that cause neuropathies. A monoclonal gammopathy, for those of you who may not know this, it's sometimes called an M protein condition. This is something common to blood cancers such as myeloma and certain lymphomas and leukemias, where there's basically an immune production that winds up attacking nerve as well. Primary amyloidosis is related to that. It basically involves a certain series of light protein change that get into these tissues, nerves included, but other organs as well, and obviously causes disruption. There are polyneuropathies caused by infections and inflammatory diseases. We had some questions yesterday about tick-caused diseases. Yes, things like Lyme, brucellosis obviously can cause neuropathies. HIV is known for causing neuropathies. And then, of course, a large reference section. I always encourage people to take a look at this because this is part of the way you can tell how extensive a workup you've actually had. It's certainly true, and people have certainly complained about this, that they go into an office, a doctor basically tests them for diabetes, maybe B12 deficiency, a couple other things, nothing comes up, and they stop. And that may not be a great thing to do because there may be causes that are discernible and, of course, can be treated. So I want to make sure everybody knows about this one. All right. Now, for some that are a little more specific, here is an excellent article about small fiber neuropathy. We were talking about different types of fibers before. These, of course, can be difficult to diagnose, as the standard nerve conduction study and electromyography tests for neuropathy can't measure these. Basically, these nerves are too small to stick electrodes into. So those often come up normal. And then you have people who come up normal on those tests being told that they don't have a neuropathy. Basically, the reference list here is excellent, and it includes many of the papers on testing for small fiber neuropathy. Skin biopsy being the current gold standard, but also things like autonomic testing and qualitative sensory testing. It talks about causes of small fiber dysfunction beyond diabetes, such as small fiber vasculitis. Those are often associated, again, with those autoimmune conditions. And also a good way to get familiar if you basically have been told you don't have a neuropathy because your nerve conduction studies are normal. Okay, next thing to talk about. One of the great papers about diabetic autonomic neuropathy from Dr. Aaron Vinnick, who I will tell you is probably the world's leading expert on diabetic neuropathy. You can Google up him, you'll come up with hundreds and hundreds of references. Basically, what people often think about with diabetic neuropathy is it causes pain. Yes, it does. But since small fibers also include autonomic functions, there are a lot of people who wind up with other symptoms that they don't really get told much about. These can range from sweating difficulties, hypopressure of the blood, basically people who stand up and faint, erectile dysfunction, bladder and gastrointestinal disruptions, all controlled by small fiber autonomic nerves. And as a result, people who are interested in getting a background on this, I recommend this article highly. And again, it's something like if you're in there and you're feeling these symptoms, and many people with small fiber syndromes often have at least some of these symptoms, even if they're not severe, I tell people this is something that you can bring to a skeptical physician and say, yes, this is something where we really detail just how extensive these can be. Okay, something else that is a rather unknown cause of neuropathy and should be better known, even though the condition is fairly well known. This is the gluten file. This is made famous by JCC, that's your pen name on certain neurotopic and gluten boards. Her real name is Cara Black. She's probably done more than any person worldwide to publicize neurological symptoms of people with gluten. There are neurologic symptoms of people with gluten. It's not just gastrointestinal upset and other autoimmune problems. It's not just limited to neuropathy. There are certain types of brain ataxias and balance problems that can be caused by this. There's also herpetitis dermatiformis, which is a skin rash that some people with celiac or gluten sensitivity experience. But what I'm going to show you this because it's a monumental work with an incredible number of references. I don't know how she put it together, but bless her. This is sort of the home page of it, and it goes on and on and on. They also do updates on Facebook for those of you who are in Facebook. But basically, as it says above, it's associated with autoimmune disease, autism, Down syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, and on and on. Notice peripheral neuropathy, ataxia, seizures, fibromyalgia, vitamin deficiency, all in there. There's a big section of neurological manifestations, as you can see on the right. This is not as well known a cause of neuropathy as it ought to be. It's fortunate that places like Columbia Presbyterian and Cornell in New York, and certain places out in Europe, particularly in Finland, where gluten sensitivity and celiac is fairly common, have actually done work on this. But I tell people, like, if you're somebody who suspects you have a problem with gluten, suspects you have celiac, it runs in your family, you're having neurological symptoms, this is a great place to get information to present on. Okay, let's see now what we'll go to. Oh, one of my favorite places to work out, which is NeuroTalk, okay, which is the successor to Brain Talk, started by Dr. John Grohol as a companion to his Psych Central board some years back. It's actually been around for a couple of decades now, and this is where people went to get information before there was social media. So considering that I certainly predate social media, I have quite a fondness for it. It's a great discussion forum and board. And the peripheral neuropathy section is one of the busy ones, but it's far from the only section there. It's probably one of the great database link places about neurology going, rivaled, of course, by that Washington Square University site. There are a lot of people here, both lay people and professionals, who come to post, including papers even before they were carried in various different types of scientific journals. It's a great place to learn about really any sort of neurological condition. And I did throw a screenshot at it just so you can see, this is one of those old-fashioned board kinds of things. You can see, like, we have the new member introductions. This is, not all that different from coming onto the WNA in a sense. Community and forum and general areas. But after that, there's a very, very large section of individual neurological conditions where people post. I've posted, I believe now, approximately 2,850 times there over the years. And it includes a lot of my own story, as well as a lot of the links we've been talking about so far. Okay, now we start to come into, this one's a little bit of a hybrid one, into the areas that do both informational types of things and also more general types of advocacy. The Neuropathy Commons, which is fairly new, is maintained by the Neurology Department of Massachusetts General Hospital, which is like, if you're in New England and you can't get down to Cornell or Columbia, that's the place to go if you think you have neuropathy. It has many of the same types of information that some of these other places do, and that, of course, we do at WNA on our website, on diagnostics, types, genetics, and current research. But the interesting reason that I like to put it in here is that it's got an unusual section for teens and kids. We usually tend to think of neuropathy as somebody that affects older people. And yes, it does to a preferential amount, but there are children and teens that get neuropathy, particularly acute onset neuropathies along the lines of Guillain-Barré syndrome or multifocal motor neuropathies. Often these are autoimmune or toxic in nature. So they have a very large section there where younger people who have this thing that their doctors may not know about because their doctors may be very unfamiliar with seeing it in somebody younger can actually get information. Okay, I do have a little screenshot about that just so you can see this. Again, we had to knock it down a little bit, but you can see the information along here, right, where you can actually go in and go deeper into it. They also have a podcast, by the way, which talks about, issues in neuropathy and has some patient stories as well. And you can see, we have about neuropathy, find a doctor, diagnostic testing, and the teens and kids site. The teens and kids site, like I said, very much fun there, very useful. Now we're going to start to get to some of the organizations that are involved with neuropathy. I left us for last, but let me actually talk to you about some of these. The basic, more overarching national organization at this point is the successor really to the Neuropathy Association, which became defunct in 2017. This is the Foundation for Peripheral Neuropathy. It is, by the way, I believe, the only neuropathy organization currently that actually has full-time paid staff, although I think it's only 3 people on that. Foundationforpn.org. It's based in the Midwest in Chicago because its major benefactor is Jack Miller, who basically founded the Jack Miller Center for Peripheral Neuropathy in Chicago in conjunction with Northwestern Hospital. Jack Miller's still on the board there. Basically, he was a very successful industrialist who experienced neuropathy and didn't really know where to turn to, so decided to actually put a good part of his fortune towards it. It has good tips in its living with neuropathy section. This is one where, yes, they still have the information about types of neuropathy and some diagnostic information, but a lot of it is about practical stuff. It's about, okay, you know, you're on medications, you may be on pain meds, but how are you doing with socks and shoes? Or how are you doing also with grippers so that you can reach things without having to like risk a fall? Do you need things that like help you in night, you know, to really, you know, experience a reduction in pain? It even includes things like the socks that contain either heating pads or cooling pads. Yes, you can find a lot of this on other websites, but they did a very, very good job with it. So we have that, and let me see if I can pull that up. There we go. Okay, so you guys can see this. This is the screenshot of the homepage for them. You know, and basically it says the mission and purpose to improve the lives of patients living with peripheral neuropathy. Yep, that's hopefully all of our mission and purpose as well. Another one that we can show you, the Neuropathy Action Foundation, which is another organization that is involved with this, although all volunteer and more or less as WNA is. It's West Coast based. It actually started in Arizona. But their basic claim to fame, other than the information they have there, is in advocacy at state legislatures. They actually have a formal lobbying presence in the state legislatures of California and Arizona, and I know they've been trying to expand that. They've been trying to make treatments such as IVIG more readily available. Basically, they have a lot of people on their boards who have been involved with legislation as well as with medical things. I have been reaching out to them. I haven't gotten a lot of stuff back, but it's definitely one of the organizations that I think we should try and work more in concert with over the years. And I believe we can show you what they look like. There we go. Okay, so you can see them as well. They basically get involved with Neuropathy Week and Neuropathy Awareness Day, which we just went through. And basically, you know, they try and do a lot of patient advocacy and, as I said, a lot of lobbying. All right. And of course, there's us. All right. You save the best for last, right? Obviously, Western Neuropathy Association, as Bev said in her little talk, is a little bit of a misnomer now because we're nationwide. And I think I'd have to check in, I think, with, you know, our membership list on this. We may even have a couple of people from Canada at this point. I'm not even sure, or people who've come to our, you know, different support groups that may be from out of the United States. Obviously, you know, some of you know this already, but it started in 1998 as a loose affiliation of California-based neuropathy support groups. That was basically Bev's work with a couple of other people involved. But of course, we've expanded the mission. Obviously, we're doing this conference today. We support research, we coordinate advocacy. We have a lot of information, obviously, on the website for those of you who've been there. But the support groups still remain the heart of the organization. And now, of course, we do most of our support grouping virtually. But yes, you know, obviously part of the reason I'm involved with it is I'm very much a believer in the mission of basically empowering people to take care of their own health and to advocate not only for themselves, but for their caregivers and for other people who may be newly diagnosed. Now, of course, I put in a little bit of a web shot there, although you probably have seen this all before. You can see obviously the stuff across the top where you can go a little bit more deeply into this. So part of the reason I did this, and part of the reason, I've written for the newsletter on this, is again the fact that, hey, we have a condition that is extraordinarily common, but it is definitely not as well known as any one of a number of other neurological conditions. I think it's very, very important for people to basically become knowledgeable about the condition, knowledgeable about the problems that we've had getting it well known, including the fact that there haven't been a lot of celebrities out there willing to talk about their neuropathy. And if people have questions about that, I can answer some of that. But the mission going forward should be, obviously, to get this a much better known situation. We want to make sure that people, when they talk about Parkinson's or they talk about MS, they talk about neuropathy in the same breath. They talk about getting research funds for neuropathy. They talk about getting more treatments for neuropathy. And it doesn't only involve, obviously, what we do here, or wearing the buttons that Catherine showed you earlier. It involves really be willing to step up as much as is possible and to work hard with any connections you have, be they people in business, people in government, people in medical centers, to basically make this the condition that not only a lot of people have, but more people know about. So that sort of ends this here. I have my little questions and comments thing, and hopefully I'll go into it. I'm looking to see, it looks like there's a lot of stuff in the chat, not so much in the Q&A.
Glen, before you get started on that, I just want to say thank you for sharing this amazing resources that you've accumulated. And I think it's amazing what we can get out of it. And I do encourage everyone to look into all of these things because it's just a treasure trove of information. Thank you.
Okay, so we see what's going on in here. I'm not even sure
Okay.
where to begin.
So here's one that says, any chance to copy the web links being presented as we can, copy and paste them and put them, in the PowerPoint. So this is going to be, this is recorded. So you can be able to go back and be able to do that. And Glenn, do you want to add anything else to that?
I actually think I'll let Catherine add, because I believe Catherine has my has my original document that she's going to be sending out, right?
No, yes. So we were talking in the chat while all this was going on. People were asking for the same thing. And so right now in everybody's inbox, you should have a copy of a document that Glenn created. It's not his PowerPoint, it's a Word doc. So go right now to your inbox and it will be there. And so that's what most of the chatting, what about the chatting is. There's probably a couple of different questions. Maybe you know this, Glenn, I don't know. Dana's asking, are there any veterans groups that are dealing with or addressing peripheral neuropathy?
Actually, and I'm not as familiar with these as I should be, there are a couple of Agent Orange groups out there that have actually talked about neuropathy being one of the effects of having been exposed. They don't concentrate on it necessarily to the exclusion of a lot of the other, obviously, medical problems that Agent Orange has exposed. But yes, it's definitely come up with that. And one other one that I know about, and this is, of course, from the fact that I was involved in a Long Island University hospital support group for a very, very long time. There are a couple of organizations, one of them started by a very, very good friend of mine, Joe Auer, involved with the 9/11 sufferers of neuropathy. Again, there are a lot of other medical conditions that came out of the first responders who went out down there. But neuropathy actually has only recently become one of the conditions for which one can claim disability under the federal government provisions there. Joe was a big part of that because he's a sufferer. He actually apparently has some form of, I believe it's scleroderma from the exposure there. He's a firefighter, now retired. But if you actually look those up, We can talk about that. And I believe, by the way, for Joe's organizations, if you go into NeuroTalk, okay, and you bring up posts by, and I better put this in the chat, because Joe goes by this name though, Echoes Long Ago. That's his call sign there. If you look up posts by him, he doesn't have anywhere near as many as mine, so you won't be looking for weeks. You'll actually see there some of the information for those organizations if you go into neurotalk.org.
Okay. Okay, we do have just a comment from Carl. He says, I've recently had the spinal cord stimulator procedures successfully installed with decent pain relief. He says, I don't think I've heard it mentioned yet. You have some.
Yeah, it's probably not surprising because that's often considered a sort of last resort thing for people. If you don't have decent pain relief, either through pharmaceutical or through outside things like TENS units or rebuilders or anodyne therapy or any of the others, I believe that it's more been used with people who have spinal cord injury and pain and problems from that without actually being specifically paralyzed or, motor deficited. But there are obviously physicians out there that will do it for neuropathy. They'll do it for neuropathic pain relief. It tends to be like those physicians tend to be few and far between though. Given that it's invasive, it's definitely very much a thing that is way down the list.
Yes. Let's see. And then, we often get this question a lot in our support group, where when somebody starts just talking to their primary care physician about their neuropathy, and they go, well, should I see a neurologist or not? What advantages do you think there are to seeing a neurologist?
Well, first of all, there's the specialization. And, I'll even go further. I say you want to see a neurologist who is a neuromuscular specialist, not necessarily a neurologist who spends most of his or her time taking care of, say, stroke patients or headache patients. I mean, yes, neurologists in their training should get some, training in peripheral neuropathies, but they certainly don't get the extent of training that neuromuscular specialists get. I hate to say this, but if you have a primary care physician who will not refer you to a neurologist, even if you bring some of these materials with them, it may be time for a new primary care physician. I'm not known, and as you can tell, right, I am hell on physicians who don't keep up in their areas of expertise. I read medical papers in 3 different languages. And the idea is that if you come in well prepared, if your doctor is embarrassed by that, is embarrassed by what they don't know, you might need a different doctor. I realize that's difficult. It's hard sometimes to find people, especially with the way insurance is nowadays, but it's worth the effort. As people learned from my story yesterday, the first neurologist I saw in Staten Island was not useless, but did not have the expertise of the people I eventually saw. And probably, I would never have gotten a skin biopsy if I had stayed there. So yeah, sometimes you got to bite that bullet and get that second or third better opinion.
So let's see. So you must have said the percentage of people who have neuropathy. Did you talk what percentage there was? Yeah, did you say that? Please repeat the percentage of folks with neuropathy and what you compared it to.
The estimation is that over the course of a lifetime, 1 in every 15 people will actually get neuropathy. So what that means, if you think about it in terms of, say, current numbers of people with neuropathy, you'll have somewhere around 20 million people in the United States suffering from this, give or take. And of course, we don't know how often it's not diagnosed either. So, I mean, you may have people suffering from neuropathy who it hasn't been diagnosed in them yet, or it may not. The idea, of course, is, and people tell me stories about this all the time. They say, grandma always used to complain that her feet hurt her, but she thought she was just old and worn out. Maybe not, Certainly, there are biomechanical problems in the feet, but there are, probably underdiagnosed neuropathies there too. And as we talked about yesterday, there seem to be, although each individual one may not affect that many people, there seem to be more and more hereditary neuropathies being discovered on a fairly regular basis as a result of the Human Genome Project. So,
and don't we usually say that of the people who have peripheral neuropathy, about 50% of those get it from diabetes?
roughly, it may be a little less than that now, because I think, again, we've had more hereditary, toxic, and autoimmune neuropathies being diagnosed
Right.
as the state of medicine in those areas has improved. Most of the autoantibodies that, say, Latov's group discovered at Cornell were unknown 30 years ago. You go back to 1990 and they didn't know many of them at all. And so really we're seeing like an expansion of this. And of course, that probably means, there've been more diagnoses of people with autoimmune and toxic causes. Obviously, before Lyme disease became described, people who suffered from that with tick bites and had neuropathies, they didn't connect that either.
Right.
What else do we have?
Let's see. Yeah. What's this last one? Let's see. Where can I look for information? Oh, all right. On or support group for SCI. What is SCI? Spinal cord injury? I guess that's what SCI
Or
stands
spinal cord
for.
implant?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, she says, I have a partial injury from thoracic tumor, which is somewhat rare. What do you suggest to research?
Spinal cord injury.
Okay, thank you.
I would absolutely hit the spinal cord injury section at NeuroTalk to start, neurotalk.org, which is one of the things that I presented here. Like I said, they're not just neuropathy, they're almost any neurological situation you can think of. And there are a lot of spinal cord injury people on that board, and at all different levels as well, and with all different attempts at treatment. They talk a lot about the Christopher Reeve initiatives there as well. But, I'm sure there are other organizations as well for that. But from what I know of, that's a good place to start. You'll definitely hit an awful lot of other references and find a lot of other places to go.
And we had another question from a member that wanted to know if we have a support group in Sacramento, California. And I think Sacramento is one of our support groups that is still trying to form up because its leader is trying to get her job more stable. She has a lot of odd hours right now, but as soon as she gets a stable job, so that she has a definite day that she can have the support group on, she's going to start up the Sacramento group. But remember too, that even if there isn't an in-person one that you could go to right now, you are always welcome to come to our virtual support groups. And we have people from California there and Texas, New York, everywhere. So don't feel that you have to wait to go off and have that Sacramento group start.
Somebody was asking here about taking Cymbalta. Is this widely used? Yeah, it actually is. Generally, you have, at least with the first-line drugs for neuropathy, you basically have the anti-epileptics. That's things like gabapentin, Lyrica, originally designed as drugs to control epilepsy. Trileptal is in there. Topamax is in there as well. You have basically the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the antidepressants, things like Cymbalta, some of them even have, Ambien involved. These are often used at dosages that are less than one would use for depression, but they do have neurotransmitter effects. And so oftentimes people who can't handle the anti-epileptics will be prescribed those, or they'll be prescribed them synergistically with the anti-epileptics. And then, of course, you have the opioid categories, which most people know about, Tramadol being a synthetic one. There are people with neuropathies that are on some of the heavier opioids out there. Again, it's very much your mileage may vary situation. I know people for whom opioids didn't do a thing for neuropathic pain. It relieved their knee pain very well, because they had joint problems, but didn't touch the nerve pain. So it's very, very much an individual situation.
Well, unless we have anybody else, I don't see anything else Gerald, did you see anything that we haven't
No, I
addressed?
think we're doing good.
Okay, so that's all. So I'm just going to thank Glenn again for all this information. I mean, there's been lots of talk in the chat again about where can we get copies of all these links so that we can find these for ourselves. And I tell you, this is when we have our support group meetings, this is the same thing that happens all the time. Glenn will start talking about one of these and he'll be posting it in the chat for everybody to copy down and use for themselves. So these are really all great resources to use to educate yourself and then to help advocate for yourself when you go see your doctor. Oh, 3 new messages.
Yes, I was gonna say.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
not questions, messages.
And
All right.
Catherine, do we also want to let everyone know that all this resource will also be available on our website?
Yes,
It will all be, you are exactly right. Well, yes.
absolutely. Yep.
Somebody wants a link for Glenn.
Hey,
Glenn,
I give
you are
out my,
welcome.
yeah,
Email.
I'll send them the email. I give out my email very freely, not a big deal.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, she's in the chat.
Yeah,
if you
I'll grab
want
it.
to answer. Starting, I think in the July newsletter, we'll be having, since Glenn's a support group leader and John and myself we'll be having our emails listed under the support group leaders. So you'll be able to contact anybody that way. Yeah, there he goes for Glenn. Okay. And
So it's time for some door prizes.
oh, it's time for some door prizes.
We
Yay,
gotta-
door prizes.
We gotta get rid of those
Back to
books.
door prizes.
Books. All right. So I tell you, last time, the small nerves, big problems, 2 out of the 3 people picked this one. So this one's pretty popular. And I think, is that the one? You know, I've got 15 of those. I started off, I think did 1 or 2 yesterday. So, you know, but we still got plenty more for the rest of the day.
Mhm.
All right. So that means that I'm just going to stop your sharing.
All right,
And I'm
thank
going
you.
to do my sharing and we'll see what happens. Okay. Full screen and spin. Okay. Where the wheel will stop, nobody knows. Hopefully it's going to be different places from the other day. Okay. Oh.
Dave,
I know, it just is right on the line there, I tell you.
I do not see Dave
I see
in
Dave.
the group,
All right,
but
so,
there is a couple of cell phone numbers.
Yeah, there's a couple call-in people, so
yeah,
they might be
somebody
here, but
But if
maybe
you
not.
call in that you really can't talk, so you can't know if you are, but hey, any of these people, if you send us an email when all of a sudden you say, yes, I was there, then that will be fine. But let's see if we can find somebody who is here. I know I saw, oh.
There we go.
Diane. Donna,
Ah,
is Donna there?
I do not see Donna.
All
no.
right, try, because I know that Diane's here, so let's see, if we can go to a different part of the wheel.
So much
Okay.
trouble to give away free books.
I know. Alexa Clayton, I don't remember, there was one A person,
No, I don't. see.
no. Let's go again. Spin, stop it. Walter, nope, I don't remember. Oh. Wendy. I don't remember. Boy, we are not. Go.
ooh.
I should have probably been taking all these people out that, all right, I know Julie's not here. She's not here because she wrote me, she's attending her niece's graduation. Okay. I'm gonna have to go through and just take everybody out. Oh. All right. No. All right, I'm gonna start removing people. I'm really sorry. All right, so there's no Ed, right? Because I don't remember seeing.
No, I don't.
Okay, this is when y'all should be taking a break, walking around. Then when you hear your
Stand
name.
up and stretch.
John, I think John's here. John should be here. I
John
think.
here? Yeah.
Isn't he? I saw his name once.
I'm looking.
I don't see him right
I
now.
know.
Oh, not right now.
No.
All right.
It's amazing all these people signed up and not here.
And they didn't come. Well, usually it's about 50% is kind of how it works out. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Yolanda Ashford? Like you said, I can't
No,
believe.
Yolanda.
No, Yolanda. Start removing everybody. Oh. Oh. Well, I think she was here yesterday. Is she here today?
Rita?
Yes. No. Yes. No.
I do not.
Don't
no,
see
don't
her. See, there's other people that were around her that are here. No.
Yep.
Jerry Mitchellmore. I'm gonna have this fixed for the last one. All right, Roxanne has to be here. I saw her up there before.
She is here.
Yes,
Roxanne is here.
So
finally. All right, so there's our first one, Roxanne. Okay.
That was quite a streak there.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I'm just gonna start taking them out. Oh, now we're going down. All right, because Jay Tittle's here. That's a shame. Is Ina here? Nope, nope, nope.
yes,
Oh, really?
Ina is here.
Yay, I know. Okay.
All right.
Yay. Okay, I know. I'm still removing you out. All right, we need one more person.
Yeah. Remember, tell us in the chat what book you want.
Right. Sheila Smith. Sheila Smith.
No, Sheila Smith is not here.
No, Sheila. Oh, because I know Ziola's there. Oh, okay. Warner Pastor.
Not a name not
No.
a name I'm familiar with. No.
No, me neither.
No, Werner's a longtime member, but
Oh, he is.
yeah, he's really cool. He has a very thick German accent. He's fun to listen to.
Oh, okay. Oh, those people. Okay, come on. Come on. Oh, see, it's like if we just get to Diane, she was here. David Good.
No.
David.
Oh my gosh. See,
Who
like
was it next to you that you said was here?
Diane. Yeah, let's see. I'll just
Diane
remember.
Yeah.
Moritz?
See, Diane Morris is here.
Let's give
Just
her
gonna give
one.
it up. Okay, well, since
She's
we're
got
coming
close.
close to 3 o'clock, we should just.
Yeah, and she was
Yeah.
yesterday.
Diane, let us know what you want. Okay, so I'm gonna stop share.
So that was Diane, Ina, and then who was the first person that won?
Roxanne,
Roxanne.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, if you guys want to send us what book you like in the chat. And then if we don't have your address, make sure you give that to us too so we can get the book to you.
Yes. Great. Okay,
Awesome.
awesome.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did that and I shouldn't have done that. You're gonna have to share your screen again. Bye.
That's okay. Okay, so before we get into talking about patient stories from John, Lindsay, do you have an update for us on fundraising?
I sure do. Okay, so I just checked my email to make sure I got everything. So let me share screen. So right now
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
at
It's you. There you go. Okay.
2640. So
All
we're
right.
getting ever closer to our
Good.
big goal. So we're super close, less than $400 to go. So anybody that's hanging out today, again, if you want to donate, please do so. You can send us a chat to the panelists and hosts letting us know your pledge amount. You can email me your pledge amount. You can donate right now on the website. You can send us a check payment. Just let us know if you want to donate so we can add you into the grand total. And hopefully within the next hour, we can get to our $3,000 goal.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So the next presentation is on patient stories, and the presenter is John Phillips, our newest board of directors. John is, like I said, newest board of directors. He and his wife have, he and his wife have 3 12-year-olds. That's why it was so hard to say. That's correct. Triplets. And he's forever grateful for their support and help. John was diagnosed with small fiber neuropathy and atypical sensory CIDP within the last 2 years. However, the associated complications began much earlier. Through his advocacy for himself, he realized there was a need to share his struggles and successes to help others facing their own fight with peripheral neuropathy and its associated conditions. This moved John to volunteer to establish and lead the virtual open discussion support group for the Western Neuropathy Association. Welcome, John, and I'm going to give the screen over to you.
Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And as Daryl said, this is kind of a story of my journey to kind of discover and accept the new me. For those that have been in my support group, this is a primary focus that I tend to like to get out there to the people. And to kind of start the story, who was I before all this? And gives you a good background of how well I do my body. I used to be a gymnast and a coach, and through that and the expertise I got in that, I got the opportunity to be an acrobat in one of Houston Grand Opera's shows, did a world tour with them. And, you know, I had a very in touch, well knowledge of what my body could do and what it was doing and what it was giving me information wise. Back then, I had no problems getting in front of people, speaking, teaching, presenting, and that kind of changed too also. Just being here right now, where before it was a simple task, today my body kind of cheats and works against me. And I had a great career. I worked my way up to a position I saw and said, I want to do that one day. I was a senior manager in the corporate engineering and operations service department for my firm. I was out there reaching out to other properties. I was teaching others and mentoring in my own company. But this changed. This all changed around 2012 in a big way. As we look at where my support through this has been, it's been my family. I got my 3 kids. I got my wife. I have my mother and my mother-in-law that lives with us. And then back in the back is my sister. Without them, this would have been much harder. With them, I was able to get through this, and they're part of the reason I continue to fight. Outside of the selfish reason, I want to be better, I want to do more, I want to thrive in life, but I'm here for them also. And through this, I kind of sat down with my wife, we went back to my records, we kind of thought about the journey. We talked about what took place, and my wife had these little things she kept saying, you got to remember this. So throughout this, you're going to see some little quotes. I do steal a quote from one of our members because I think it's very important as anyone tells their story. But my wife mentioned this, illness affects the entire family, and it was frustrating not to be able to help. You did everything you could to remain functional, and I have the deepest respect for your courage and your positive attitude towards adversity. I want others to know that attitude makes a difference and not to lose hope. She said, how I approached this for her was hard to comprehend, but that approach to continue to move forward, to continue to thrive, to continue to be okay with who I was at that point in time. And as I tell my story, you will hear many me's. The next one is something I tell in my support group. There has been many versions of me. I've had to learn to accept each one so I could learn to thrive as the new one. And you'll hear that in my story. And I think this is important for everyone that is suffering from peripheral neuropathy or any major condition that changes your way of life or who you are. You know, it does change you. You are a new person. And in some cases, you may not be that person again. I am definitely not. And I'm okay with that. I'm thriving with who I am today. And then, of course, Don's famous quote that came up earlier, we are all an experiment of one. And this is very important. In my story, I'll talk about what worked for me. Maybe it can help you reach out and find ways to approach what's affecting you, but it may not always work for you. So take what I say and what I present to you, and hopefully it helps you find a direction, but also remember, it may not always work for you. So when did this all start with me? And I talk about 2012 because that's the first major flare and the biggest change in my life. But before 2012, there was a lot of things to think about. You know, I had a lot of things medically that really affected me as a kid. In approximately second grade, I was in a car accident. And in that car accident stuff, you know, different type of time and everything, the safety belt didn't hold me. I flew forward. I hit my head on the dashboard, had to go to the hospital, stitches and everything, but really and truly a concussion, nothing major. But one thing that happened after that is I had my first vasovagal episode ever. And this is kind of something important you'll hear about later in my story. But shortly after that, my mom and I went up to visit her parents in Albuquerque. And when I was there, I was just running around, playing, just being a kid and everything. And all of a sudden, I felt this inrush of this pressure. And then I felt the sinking sensation of it. And the world started spinning. And for a split second, I just saw black. And then it was done. It was over. And this is my first vasovagal episode that ever occurred. But since that time, they have always occurred. Some years it's better, some years it's less. As I eventually got into my teen years, probably around 18 years of age, it got a little bit worse. The vasovagal episodes ended up turning into syncope episodes. And this occurrence happened from time to time, but wasn't something we could really understand and establish. And eventually, around age 24, it just stopped. Never had a syncope episode ever again. Around sixth grade was the first time I started having this weird, strange, almost like a poison ivy effect. And later in life, through biopsies and other approaches, we determined it's dyshydrotic eczema. And the interesting thing is this occurrence started then, and it happened on a regular basis. If I got too hot, if I was in the sun too long, there was definitely a component that eventually, now looking back, I truly understand. But this was a sign of something else going on. And probably around my mid-20s, as the things started to settle down with the vasovagal, I started having GI issues to the point to where the pain was severe. I was rushed to the hospital, all the tests in the world, and unfortunately, they find nothing. It was recommended, well, maybe it's celiac. And at that time, it's like, okay, we're gonna have to get approval to get testing. And that took a while. So I attempted a gluten-free diet for almost a year. And I did see some minor improvements. I think most of those improvements, looking back today, is back when I was trying this diet, there was probably an area about 1 by 1 with just a couple of items, and that was the whole gluten-free menu. Due to that, I ate more vegetables. I ate probably more leaner meats, and my diet overall was healthier. I think that's where my improvements came, but this lingering GI issue is really part of my big story. And then fatigue sucked in. This fatigue started And I'll show you a graph here shortly, because one of the things as I went through my records, I found some information to kind of explain how I felt. And I kind of said that, this is my feeling graph. This is how functional I felt. But chronic fatigue started in around age 31. And each year it got a little bit worse and worse. And this was my way of explaining how I felt when I eventually did go to Mayo Clinic. And one of the interesting things you'll see on this is around 32, you'll see my first EMG. I'll talk about that a little bit, because that EMG I do remember, and I'll explain the difference later. It hurt. It hurt a lot. I was in tears, and I was never in my life going to do one of those again. But as you can see, if you look at my quality of life chart, it slowly got less and less. And then I had the flares, and I have these changes. I have successes, but then I have a lot of dips back. So this is where my story begins. In September 2021 is my first major flare. It did have an acute onset, but there were some precursors. There were some things that told me something was wrong. And I was going to the doctors, and I was looking at these things. I was trying to understand. All of a sudden, my autonomic system's kind of a little out of whack. My blood pressure is up. My heart rate's all over the place. I'm tachycardic. I'm bradycardic. My body's just completely confused. I'm confused, and I'm trying to find help for myself in this instant. And as time goes on and we're getting closer to September 13th, I noticed other things. I had these weird little electric shocks that just kind of appeared and went away. And it was once here, once there. And then I'm walking through a doorway, and I feel I'm in the center of the doorway, and I'm walking through the doorway, and I run into the door jamb. Weird little things were changing. And I also noticed this brain fog occurred. It was harder for me to think about words. I knew the word I wanted to say, I just couldn't get to it. And this was telling me something was changing. I was seeing my cardiologist at this time. We were adjusting medicines. We were trying to compensate for what was taking place. And then eventually I had a conference I was going to. At this time, I was in corporate engineering. We had this conference that occurred every couple of years. Engineers from around the world come and join, and I was presenting. I was actually looking forward to this. I was really excited because I established a new program, and we were going to release it to the company and everything. And I was ready for this. Once again, this is something I enjoy doing. And I'm in the middle of one of my presentations, and while I'm there, I noticed something a little bit weird. My heart's not really in control, even though I changed my medicine. I see double vision really quick, and then all of a sudden I see static, and it goes away. And I remember after that, I call my doctor, and I explain to him what this is. We make a little change, and I was like, okay, well, we're going to get through this. He's got an appointment. As soon as I get back in town, I'm going to be there. Last day of this conference, I wake up, and my life is different. I see differently. As of this day, and since this day, 24/7, I see visual snow. It's called visual snow, but I call it static vision. If you go back and go to an old analog TV and it was out of tune and it's all fuzzy and white, that's how I see. I see that way 24/7. When my eyes are closed, I see white and gray static. So from this point on, I never see dark. I also had some double vision, and I had this kind of ghost image. I would look at something and it just kind of stay there, and it would kind of fade through my vision and fields. I had bilateral tinnitus, and it was this very loud, almost electronic sound. And since this day, it has been there. It does change a little bit later on, but it's become a massive neurologic change for me. And I fly home. When I get home, I tell my wife about this, and just a little bit of background about my wife. She's one of the best supports I could ever have, but she is an MD from Mexico. She has a medical background. She was a major help in finding caregivers and finding doctors and trying to find answers for me. But when I explained to her what was going on, she quickly found an ophthalmologist, rushes me there, and everything's good. Everything's good. It's going to be a big part of my story. It's slowly falling apart with nothing showing why I'm falling apart. So we finished the ophthalmologist, my retina's good, everything's great, and we go home. I eventually go to bed at that time, and I woke up, and the next day I had headaches, I had migraines, I had these sensations that I couldn't explain. I'm like in this overload sensation now. It was already hard enough to sleep through the night because of tinnitus and the visual snow and all this strangeness. But this is a new deal. And soon after, the brain fog got worse. I was in kind of this overload process. It was harder to think. It was harder to say what I wanted to say because too many things were attacking me and things were hard. This was a scary time for me. And quickly soon after, I had problems holding to use a restroom. I had incontinence issue. I was having issues where my GI just was moving at different speeds and there was nothing consistent. It all changed. And soon after, the vertigo steps in. My balance is dramatically affected. And in a short bit of time, I was actually scared to pick my feet up. I was dragging my feet on the ground and I was seeing the world in a different way. I remember one thing I read about is I felt like I was in a 3D movie 24/7. That's just how the world felt. And when I did try to walk, I would tend to drag my left foot or get stuck on it and trip on it. And later to come find out it's a drop foot condition to where, the feet just don't want to operate correctly. And to compensate for this, I became more rigid. I became slower. I shuffled my feet and eventually I'm holding onto walls and I feel like I just can't stand without support. And with all of this sensory issues and stuff, the sleep is hard. It's not easy to fall asleep with the snow and the tinnitus. You're overwhelmed with the headaches and migraines. I have this sensation of falling on a constant basis and movements happening everywhere. And eventually, with all this that's going on, my libido is gone. I am a different person at this point in time. I'm scared. My wife's scared. At this point in time in my life, my kids were 3 years of age. And they didn't know what was happening to daddy. As time moved on a little bit, and about 2 months later, I happened to be on a phone call with one of my bosses at work. He was calling to check on me, kind of see how things were going at that point in time in my life. And everyone was concerned because, hearing about what's going on, it's like, okay, is this person okay? And things took for a turn for the worse that day. I was on that call and my wife explained to me, because some of my memory is bad of these periods, but she goes, all of a sudden you started to talk really slow. You weren't speaking in a normal manner. You were having problems enunciating words. And then sometimes you were kind of using the wrong words and a slurring aspect started to occur. At this point in time, my wife kind of gets me off the phone and apologizes and said, I need to take care of John. And she rushes me to the hospital. Everyone's thinking at this point in time, I've had a stroke. Get to the hospital, run every test in the world, MRIs, they're checking to see, did I have a stroke? They're trying to figure out what can they do. And it didn't matter what we had done. It was all normal. Nothing indicated something was wrong with me at this point in time. My wife, and I've already kind of said this, at this point in time, she said, I walked like a 90-year-old man. The problem is I also felt like a 90-year-old man. And this was my life at that point in time. As I was working on trying to understand this time and remember the facts and everything, my wife said something to me, and I mean, it took a second for me to kind of explain this, but she said, I wish I could have done more. I could have brought you your food, but you would not let me. And I remembered at that time, my wife wanted to do everything. My kids wanted to, okay, you just stay in bed. We know you feel bad. But I lost so much of who I was. If I could still go get food for myself, I was able to do something for myself. I did not want to lose any more of me any further. So when I had the opportunity, I did what I could. Sometimes to the detriment of myself. I had a fall here or there. I dropped something. It was probably pretty maddened time for my wife, my mother-in-law, and the kids at the house. But I had to still be me. I had to do something for me. And around this time, one of the things I remember most, and probably one of the hardest memories to think of because it was the sweetest thing in the world, is on a daily basis, my daughter would come in and she would say, the doctor is in and I'm here to fix my daddy. And it's gut-wrenching to remember that time and everything. And it was more shocking than the fact that I thought she was using the Doc McStuffins, and my memory is a little bit off, but she brought the saw, the screwdriver, and probably had the wrong tools in place. So through all this, the hospitals and everything, as I said, testing for the most part comes back normal. The one good thing from the hospital visit, they referred me to a pain management. He says, you got some type of migraine or something going on, that I know someone that knows this really well. He referred me to Dr. Pankaj Satia, and he is still one of the few doctors I still see to this day. Dr. Satia started some of this testing from scratch, was looking at everything from a different approach, and decided, well, there's some oddities. So we're going to do a full workup. And one of the things that did come back a little bit different is I ended up having several lumbar punctures. What was interesting about this is I had variations. It came in high. I had several occurrences where it came at 0 with fluid. And then I had times where it was perfectly normal. So that led to do myelograms and see, is this a sign of something? Once again, everything's normal. Okay, we see it, but we don't understand it. Blood work came in, and his biggest concern on this is you're in so much pain, you have so much going on, it's going to affect your hormones. He did those testing, and at this point in time found, okay, my hormones have crashed. I was producing very little testosterone, very little thyroid. My body was becoming that 90-year-old man in this case. So we started addressing that. And then from all this, it's, okay, what do you have? Well, you got cluster headaches, you have chronic migraines, you have basilar migraines. How do we approach this? And at this point in time, we started nerve blocks. We started different type of medications that would help with this. I eventually got better. One of the things my wife said that was good about me was I was a very compliant patient. I did everything they said to the T. If they said to do yoga, I went and found yoga. If they said to get 8 hours of sleep, I made sure I did it, and I was consistent. I took all my medicines. I kept everything going the way it should be. But as she said, your compliance with treatment made you the best patient, but your condition made you the hardest to determine treatment. And this was kind of the story, and would be my story for a while. In March of 2013, I eventually was able to return to work. I felt 95% recovered. When you go through something of this extreme, your perception can be altered. I look back and I know I wasn't 90 to 95%. I did have some minor persistent issues, but for the most part, the major concerning thing, the headaches and migraines, was under control. But I had this persistent slight body stiffness, but it was kind of explained. I spent most of my time in a chair, most of my time in a bed, and I was just starting to get more acclimated to activity. I was exercising, I was doing yoga, and I had this persistent body pain. But as I did more, it was improving. I had this weird little lingering sensation on the right side of my face, paresthesia. And occasionally I was still having the electric shocks. Once again, minor headaches and migraines, but it was all controlled. And one of the strangest things happened to me. At the beginning, I said I was a gymnast. I'm very well tuned with my body, my balance and everything. But the strangest thing occurred. I used to be predominantly left balance. I'm now predominantly right balance. No one can explain to me what happened, but this is a strange and unusual thing. This is the new me. I had to be okay with the fact that I was different, and I had to find my way to thrive. I wanted to thrive at work. I wanted to get back into my job, my career, and I wanted to be there more for my family because I stepped away from that. It was me focusing on being a better person, me focusing on being healthy, being able to provide again. And then the magic thing I hear once I do return to work, no one says it to me directly, but I hear it. I heard he was stressed. All this happened because the job was maybe a little bit too hard or a little bit too stressful. That never came from anyone I directly work with, because one of the things I was known at work was thriving with stress, being thrown into stressful situations. My job, that was part of what we did. If something happened, we were the resource. If we had to be there, we would be there. I enjoyed that piece. So things were going well and everything. And, you know, for the most part, my health was okay. I was living, I was thriving at that point in life of who I was. And in January of 2014, I had this weird attack. It was very different than what happened before. I remember I got out of the shower and all of a sudden my body just slowly but quickly started to stiffen and extreme pain throughout. I all of a sudden was on the floor in a fetal-like position and not able to get up, not able to move. My headache and migraine went completely through the roof, and you know, I just was not in control of my body. I'm yelling for help, and my wife comes, my mother-in-law comes, and they call an ambulance, and I'm rushed to the hospital. Get to the hospital, they don't see anything really of what's going on. I'm back to all the tests, the lumbar punctures, the blood work and everything. And one of the strange things that came up is, for some unknown reason, my CK level, creatine kinesis level, is through the roof. But there's nothing else to explain why. What does this mean? I was in the hospital for about a week, and once things kind of came down to a more manageable level, I was back to me again, but a little bit less than me once again. From there, I was kind of moving through, you know, that event kind of scared me a bit. It kind of changed my thoughts. I kind of slowed down a little bit, and I was really focusing on, okay, am I okay? Is there other things going on? And right around in September of 2014, I noticed the precursors again. I noticed the urination started to get really high and very erratic. I noticed my blood pressure is all over the place again. And I'm seeing all these same precursors starting to occur. The one thing that was a little bit different is electric shocks are a little bit more. All of a sudden, I'm in this overload. And what took months to build up and create this major deficit before, it took days this time. The sleep was almost non-existent at this point in time. I'm holding on to the walls. I'm falling a lot. And I have this, what I call visual vertigo. My eyes just couldn't manage everything that was taking place. The double visions through the roof. I have single ocular double vision to where I think I'm seeing double vision with one eye open. As I'm focusing on the world, it's all moving. If I see patterns, I feel like I'm in this unexplainable movie or acid trip. I can't explain it. And at this point in time, I just can't fall asleep until I hit point of exhaustion and I collapse for days. And the cycle just repeated over and over. At this point in time, Dr. Satia said, let's get some other people that understands some things a little bit more. He said, let's kind of reevaluate things once again. So we're going to kind of start over, bring in a new neurologist and stuff. And we start focusing on, okay, what does this mean? And then all of a sudden my tinnitus just goes up an octave. It's louder now, it's more prevalent, and now it's even harder to sleep. My vertigo gets to a point where it's completely out of control. I can't manage moving around. I can't manage sitting up. Walking creates issues. Escalators were torture. Elevators, I just did not do. And cars, to be able to get someplace, I felt sorry for whoever was driving, because all I did was complain. I couldn't handle it because it felt like my brain was trying to shove out of my head or go to the back of the head. All these movement sensations just excited every sense street in my body. With this and stuff, and the new neurologist I saw, he had a relationship already with Mayo because that's where he did some of his studies. He said, you know, you have a lot going on. I think you may have dysautonomia with what's going on with the heart and everything. It may not explain the headaches and stuff, but I think you need to go someplace that can look at this a different way. So in November 2014, he ends up sending me to Mayo Clinic. And when I get to Mayo Clinic, it was a much different experience. They said, we're going to start over, but we're going to be a little bit more comprehensive and kind of be more global in our approach. But we've already gotten all your records from all your doctors. We got all your lab works. We got all your tests and everything. And we think we know what you got, but I need you to talk to this doctor first. We believe you have chronic subjective dizziness. We believe this explains this vertigo, this dizziness, the visual disturbances, the link to the visual snow, the tinnitus, and maybe that's where the headaches and everything is tied. The good thing is in 2014, when I was going to the Mayo Clinic, 2 years prior, this was actually given a diagnostic code, which means I could actually get treatment through my insurance. I could actually get coverage with insurance. So I came at the right time. Today, you don't hear much speak of chronic subjective dizziness because it's now known as persistent postural perceptual dizziness. But at that time, that's what I was diagnosed with. At Mayo Clinic, I was immediately seen by this doctor and everything. We did some workups, we did some talking. I had to go through in great detail of how my life was being affected. And I ended up with the diagnosis. And he says, good thing is we already know how to treat this. So what is chronic subjective dizziness? I said, kind of explain that to me. And he said, imagine you're a baby and you're having to reconnect and learn to walk and understand the world, understand balance, understand muscle feedback, understand proprioception information. That's you. You are going to have to reconnect those. And we're going to do two things. We're going to find the right SSRI for you. So I was put on Zoloft or Citrulline at that time. And he says, it's not for the antidepressant, but in this case, we need to calm the nerves down a little bit. We have found you need that in order for your physical therapy and occupational therapy to work. And you need to do vestibular ocular reflex, or VOR. We have a modified vestibular neurologic rehabilitation program that you're going to do. We're going to get you into PT. We're going to build this program, and you're going to need to find a place where you live that we can work with and explain to them how to do this, because you can't do it the normal way. In addition to that, they wanted to review my migraines. They wanted to understand, do I have the best treatment? Do they wanted to understand, is it just a migraine? Is it headaches? And what is the symptomology of this? And how can we best approach it? They wanted to do an evaluation for the dysautonomia, which was the reason I was there. And they really wanted to look in, okay, is there something else neurologic or endocrine going on? Is it MS? Is it a precursor to ALS? Is there something more rare out there that maybe we can kind of see. So this is my first trip to Mayo. I was there for about 4 weeks. For the first time, I felt like we have answers. And to hear someone say, I know what you got based on reviewing your records and we're going to confirm it, it was the best feeling in my life. For the longest time and through 2012, it was always an idea and let's treat, but they were able to say, you got this. So I come back from the Mayo Clinic and I hook up with Tier Memorial Hermann, and this is the Institute for Rehabilitation Research here in Houston through the Memorial Hermann Hospital System. And I started my VOR, my neurologic rehab. We got the information, the therapists here in Houston were talking to the therapists in Mayo Clinic. The one thing I was told is slow. I was told once you get to a point where something doesn't feel right, you need to stop. The only problem I had is my autonomic system at this point in time is really crazy. One of the things I did come back from Mayo is they felt, in this case, my thyroid levels were a little bit higher than they would use. So they changed some of my medications around. Some of this may have had a little bit of an effect, but I started to get a little bit worse. The biggest problem with going to any rehab center, you first have to make it through the testing to allow you to do the rehab. So one of my biggest problems, because of how car rides were, movement was, my mom, which I think to this day, she drove me almost every day to my appointments. We had to show up 2 hours early. I needed the 2 hours to allow my body to calm down, and maybe my heart rate would be low enough so I could do rehab. Maybe my blood pressure would be within the right ranges so I could do my rehab. My body's fighting me, not letting me do what I need to do to get better, but we had to figure it out. My autonomic system, as I said, I came back, things started to get a little bit worse, really got out of whack. I would be up, standing around, walking, doing my therapy. My heart rate's low, my blood pressure's low. I'd go sit down. My heart rate's up, my blood pressure's up. Nothing was in sync. Nothing was working right at this point in time. As we kind of go through the therapy, one of the things my therapist said to me, and I've shared this many times, up front, she said, what you're going through is hard, but try to remember the humor. And it took me a couple of sessions there to understand what she meant by that. And she wasn't saying the humor of my conditions, but you got to find those good things in what you're doing. You got to laugh periodically. And sometimes you got to step away from your condition and relook at it a different way, because that helps you. You have to have the right attitude. You have to have that goal set. And for me, in this case, my goal was small. I wanted to make it to therapy. I wanted to be able to do my therapy. And one day I wanted to be able to stay my whole time for therapy. But we started working through this. I'm getting prepared. I have to go back to Mayo. So I'm wanting to do as much as I can. So my next visit to Mayo, I can show some progress. This is the gymnast in me. This is that attitude, the approach and everything to be better. But it may have been defeating in my case because I may not have been paying attention well enough to the one rule Mayo gave me. Do it slow. Progress will take long. It's got to be slow. Don't push through. The minute you experience something, stop. I didn't understand this at that time. So eventually in February of 2015, I'm going back to Mayo. I got to finish some of my reviews. There was a couple of dysautonomia tests I had to do. I had to do the infamous sweat test where they paint you with gold powder and they watch you sweat. And I remember becoming the purple man in this instant. And that was probably one of the worst tests I ever went through. Because at that time in my condition, I was being pushed around in a wheelchair. I could walk, but it was with a lot of effort. It required me to hold on to a cane, and I am putting pressure on it because I needed a significant amount of feedback to feel comfortable. I'm holding onto the walls. And I remember in this visit, it took a bit for my wife to talk to me about this and to say, do you remember this fall? In the rehabilitation center, one of the things they wanted me to do was become less reliant on my cane, less reliant on the walls, less reliant on the walkers. And they tried to teach me how to use a walking stick. Yeah, that didn't go too well in this instance. And I had a pretty bad fall at Mayo. But from there, my goal is to improve. My goal is to, come out of this and to thrive at some point in time. Yes, I was going to be different. Yes, I may not be the same, but I needed to thrive. So after all this treatments, all this testing and done, okay, Mayo's got my diagnosis and treatment plan. You got chronic subjective dizziness, you have PPPD, and you have a gait disorder. Okay, well, we knew the chronic subjective dizziness, and okay, we definitely knew the gait disorder. I did not meet the criteria in this case for the Mayo criteria for dysautonomia, because some of my tests, when they did it, I was feeling good. And I think one of the things as we all go through this, and I think we all say to ourselves, I wish I could have done that test like 2 weeks ago when I was actually feeling bad. I think sometimes when our tests happen, it may not be the best time to capture really what's going on. And I had a couple where I was just under the threshold to say I had dysautonomia, but I did leave the Mayo Clinic with a dysfunction of my autonomic nerve system. I had the definition or the diagnosis of a chronic migraines, and they changed my treatment, said, we want you to definitely go to the Botox, and with the headaches and stuff, maybe you supplement with the nerve blocks, because those were working for parts of it. But we brought Botox into the mix. And we want you to really focus on the VOR and the vestibular neurologic rehab, and we want you to slow down. So this was the moment back in the day when I would have been a gymnast, the coach pulls me to the side and says, okay, stop, restart, let's approach this differently. So go back to tier and we start over. At this point in time, I actually regressed on some of my physical therapy, and to start my day in the VOR at this point in time, I was just trying to do my focal and move my head side to side. And the minute I had any sensation changes or vertigo enhanced or this falling sensation enhanced, I stopped. I started doing this more often during the day, and I did it every day. I was doing it 4 times a day, enough time to give me enough breaks. I went to physical therapy 3 times a week. And if I was able to do it 2, my goal was going to be 3. Once I did 3, my goal was going to do this. And I slowly progressed. Eventually, I did reach a point to where I had started reconnecting some of these connections. And it was time to rework my dynamics of how to walk. And up to this time, I never really paid attention how I was walking. I was at the point to where I was still using a cane, but I wasn't putting pressure on the cane. It was just to give me enough feedback to make me have this comfort. And then it was time to go without the cane. And I remember my therapist saying, okay, I'm going to take a video and I want you to watch it. And I just had to walk. It was maybe 20, 25 feet. And she videotapes me and she said, okay, this is what we're going to fix. And I remember still to this day, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. My feet are moving 1 speed. My arms are moving twice the speed. Nothing's in sync. And I'm looking at someone trying to walk and it just doesn't make sense. And at this point, we had to kind of step back and kind of go through it again and really, okay, we got to slow down. We're going to take a step back. Let's try to get this dynamics and corrected. But eventually I did. Small steps forward, migraines under control with the Botox, headaches under control now with the nerve blocks, and eventually I stopped the nerve blocks and the Botox is all I needed. Some of the medications at this time I was taking for the pain appeared to be helping, and things were better. Eventually I reached the point to where the doctor said, okay, you're 100% recovered from the chronic subjective dizziness. Your headaches and migraines are fully in control. It's time to think about going back to work. And I was talking to my work and everything. This has now been a little bit over a year. I've been out on disability, relearned to walk, got my body in a better shape, was doing a lot of yoga, was exercising on top of the physical therapy. And, you know, my life was better. This is a new me once again. This is okay. I'm good. I'm thriving. But one of the things I did notice from this is there was still, once again, these persistent issues. I still had this minimum body stiffness that was kind of in the background, but it was very minor. I still had the paresthesia. No one really could explain that. Everyone thought it was, okay, there's association with the migraines, the headaches, some of the procedures are going through, just too much. And I was still having electrical shocks in this case. But for me, I was 100% better. I was returning to work, and, you know, we'll watch these. We'll get an understanding, and it's back to work. But from 2016 to 2020, I had this very slow progression. Some things were changing so slow, I didn't notice until I did. Some of these things are things my wife noticed and told me, okay, you got to watch this. My fatigue slowly escalated, and probably around 2018, 2019, I was going to work, coming home, falling asleep, waking up, and okay, I would sleep in on the weekends. But the fatigue got even worse, to the point where I'm going to work, I'm sleeping all day, at night. And then over the weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, I'm just sleeping. I needed that to recover so I could start the whole cycle over again. Slowly, some of my autonomic systems started to progress a little bit. You know, the heart rate was a little bit more out of control. I was having more bradycardia, tachycardia. And I can remember beginning of 2019, I was at the swimming pool with the kids, and we're just playing in the pool. And at this point in time, all of a sudden I feel this inrush, and I can tell and I can feel it when this is occurring. My blood pressure went super high, and then I feel this kind of drop. And at that point in time, of course, I had the Apple Watch on and stuff, and I'm looking, and my heart rate went up to 165 and then just drops down to 50 and then goes right to 90. And I'm profusely sweating. So the autonomic system is just starting to get messed up again. I ended up seeing a new doctor here in Houston that kind of specializes in cardiac dysautonomia, did another workup, did some testing. And in 2019, I finally met the criteria for dysautonomia. I was diagnosed with parasympathetic predominant failure of the sympathetic response, heart rate variability, bradycardia, tachycardia, and blood pressure variability. So, okay, now I have another diagnosis. I have something that gives me some hope, and okay, how do we treat this? Well, we're going to treat the symptoms as they occur. If you're having high blood pressure and it tends to be holding, here you take this medicine. If it's low, you take this. If you're bradycardic and it doesn't want to break, you take this medicine. So I'm at this point in time, okay, getting in control of my life again through the medicines. It seemed to help, but it just didn't improve. One of the other things that was happening, and this happened actually so slow, I never noticed. My pain slowly increased. My stiffness of my body slowly increased to the point in 2019, I really noticed a change. And at this point in time, the change was the fact of I was living my life by the sock rule. I judged my day and how things were going to go on how hard it was to put my socks on. The doctors really didn't understand, and I started going back. Unfortunately, when you go through episodes and conditions like I did in the visit with Mayo, I kept up with my doctors to make sure things were staying good. But I think at the same time, things were happening so slowly, I didn't really notice, but I was also, kind of just stepped away from things for a little bit because I'd already been through so much. And it was time for me to pay attention again. My doctors started putting me on different medications to help with the pain. And some of them are typical nerve related, other ones not. Eventually, at one point in time, we'll be put on gabapentin and taking it to the max doses, no avail. Eventually, I was on Lyrica, max doses, no avail. I had several different muscle relaxants they tried, nothing was working. And shortly after, the pain was at a point where it had escalated so much, I also started noticing I had pain in the bones. My whole body was hurting. My whole body was being affected. And I had this weird sensation. It felt like I had a ace bandage around my chest. And, it took me a while to look, and it was called the MS hug is what it's most prominently known of, but it's a sensation of tightening around the chest. Things kept going. My fasciculation started to get worse, and I really didn't have this as a major symptom in the past, but it was there, but it was so minor. It wasn't something I really thought of, but it was on my list of previous things I experienced. My internal tremors started to occur, and this was actually a pretty fun episode for me and my wife. So we have one of these adjustable beds we got and everything, and it's got the massager and everything. And probably around 2018, periodically, my wife would hit me really quick and say, "John, wake up, turn the bed off. Why did you turn on the massager again?" And I'm like, "I didn't do it, but I just didn't really pay attention." And this happened so many times, I eventually decided I'm just unplugging the bed. It's not going to do anything at this point in time, but my wife continues to do it. And I remember one night we got in this really big fight about it. It's like, the bed is unplugged. There's no way it's doing. But she goes, "You're waking me up. The bed's vibrating." And I said, "I don't know what it is." And after that night, one night it occurred, and my wife wakes up, she feels this vibration aspect, and she reaches over me and puts her hand on my leg. And at that point in time, she knew it was me. So this internal tremor was occurring, and a lot of my symptoms were escalating. My libido was absolutely nothing at this point in time. And my life was downhill again. I started to have escalations in foot drop. I was tripping more, and life was getting harder. As things continued to progress and we're getting closer to 2020, I started to have loss of sensation in my right palm. And I started to get sensation changes in 2019. I was periodically having burning, freezing skin sensation. I would get itching and pinching and bugs crawling, water droplets, tingling. It started off small, but it slowly got worse. And then the brain fog got bad. And this is the thing that really scared me. This is the thing that really made my wife and I put pressure back again on Dr. Satia. We got to start over. There's something really going wrong. And what this was I remember driving home. I remember getting into the car. I have recollection of driving and seeing stuff as I go, but I don't remember how I got home. And that was scary. And that was scary to my doctors. So as I said, we started the predominant treatments, and eventually we got to Lyrica and baclofen. We reached a point where I eventually had maxed out the dose, and we had to start working through taper off, which for me was going to be a very long process. We started initial EMGs and nerve conduction studies because of the sensation changes and the sensation loss in my palm, the electric shock sensation. And in January of 2020, my first one came back normal. They noticed a slight change in motor in my right hand where I had the sensation loss, but everything was within the normal. And I remember as I left there, I go, okay, so what is this? Okay, you're a neurologist, you have a neuromuscular background. What could this be? She goes, well, it's not the long fibers. So maybe it's small fiber. Maybe it's small fiber neuropathy. And like, okay, well, what do I do? Well, we'll finish the test results and we'll send this back to your neurologist. And I remember going back to Dr. Satia's office and he goes, well, okay, I got test results, don't see anything. And I go, well, they mentioned small fiber neuropathy. And he goes, okay, so what are they doing? Are they going to do blood work? Are they doing punch biopsy? He started listing off all these things. Are they going to do? And I said, no, they said, come back to you. And I remember his frustration on that day. And he said, okay, you're going to come back in 2 days. We're doing your punch biopsy. You need to go get all this blood work done. And we got to look at several different things. Things continued to get a little bit worse. The stiffness got a little bit harder to deal with. I had some other symptoms start to occur. I had some weakness sensation. It was more of a perception of weakness on my left side. I started to get some other sensation changes in my left foot. And eventually he sent me back for another EMG and nerve conduction study in June. This one came back much different than the one in January. Actually, that one I was feeling kind of okay. In this one, I had an unusual results. Motor unit potential firing despite patient being in relaxed state. And I remember them doing this over and over. They were even coming over, shaking the leg, okay, you're relaxed. And then they would redo the test. And the other thing that came back was peripheral nerve hyperexcitability. So I actually have another finding. And one of the interesting aspects of this, and if you remember in that graph earlier, my first nerve conduction I did at age 32 hurt. It was painful. I was in tears. I was never going to do those again. Interesting thing in this case, these didn't hurt. These actually felt good. It was very unusual. I remember as they were doing both these nerve conduction studies, and I even talk about this in my group sessions, I actually had relief. I felt a little bit better. That persisted for about a day or two. I actually was enjoying my nerve conduction study, which is quite abnormal. But this was telling us, okay, there's more things we got to understand and look at. We did the skin punch biopsy. And yes, I was positive for small fiber neuropathy. Based on the biopsy results, they said potentially link dependent. But based on how I presented with starting in the face and the irregularity around my body, my neurologist says, no, you have non-link dependent because of how you're experiencing this disease or presenting. And one of the places I have the least issues with the nerves and the nerve sensations and the pain is actually in my hands and feet. The most predominant area being my head and face, my neck, chest, and my legs. And while all this was occurring, and shortly after my punch biopsy, I had one of those dyshydrotic eczema episodes. And it's actually been a while since I had a really bad one. And the typical course of just kind of settling down, Benadryl, relaxing, and staying out of the sun just didn't work. And they actually put me on a Medro pack to try to get it to calm down because typical things we did just didn't work. And this was actually a blessing. When I did that Medro pack, my pain went down. My stiffness went down. For the period I was on that Medro pack, the sock rule no longer applied. I could reach my feet. It didn't hurt as bad. Yes, I still had pain and stiffness, but I was like at baseline. But it was short-lived. But that gave me hope. So first thing I did, I'm on the phone and I'm calling Dr. Satia, my neurologist, and I said, whatever happened here, we got to figure out. This is where I say, as you learn more, you find more. We got to advocate for ourselves. This was a big change for me. It was a successful change. It was a positive change. And my doctors had to figure that out. So Dr. Satia says, okay, I need you to go to a rheumatologist. I got one that's not black and white, really gray, looks at the symptoms, does approaches differently. And I went to go see her. She did a whole slew of blood work, looked at antibodies, looked at potential autoimmune presence, looked for some more rare items. But she said, okay, let's try something. She says, let's put you on steroids, but based on what you explained to me, what you got with the Medropack, it sounds like you need more. And I really don't want you on oral based on how high of a dose I think you need. So we started high dose IV Solumedrol for every 2 to 3 weeks. Basically, once everything started to reoccur, it was time to schedule a visit and get back in. So I started off, I'm doing about 0.5 gram to 1 gram, depending on how severe things were. I started at 2-week intervals, eventually was making it to 3. The pain and stiffness was almost non-existent. My life was great. But there's concern, that's a lot. And the other thing is okay, what's really creating this? And at this point in time, based on my presentation, the rheumatologist is expecting, okay, some type of autoimmune presence is going to come back, or some type of disease that can generate an autoimmune response is going to come back. But once again, I'm in the same place. Everything's back again negative. It's the story I think we all go through. It's the hard part about our diseases at times, that we have so many non-answers. Eventually, based on everything coming back, and I'm still having a lot of the nerve issues, she decides to put me on Celsa. She wants to see going on immunosuppressant, see how that helps. And one of the nice things that does occur with this is, things kind of level out on the nerve sensations. Things are kind of on hold, maybe a slight progression, but there was a slight improvement. The only problem is I was still having to get the Solumedrol too often. So she decided, okay, we have a lot of luck with people on high dose steroids. I want to put you on Plaquenil. We've known this helps kind of space those out. So I started hydroxychloroquine or Plaquenil at that time. And, things were kind of on a hold. Things were okay. But then things kind of changed again. I already told you I had that perception of weakness on my left side, but it actually got worse. Before it seemed to be more my arm and my shoulder. Now it was more my arm, shoulder, leg. Sensations on my left leg started to change a bit, and okay, something's going on again. My fasciculations start to escalate. Things are kind of getting out of control again. And back to Dr. Satia, back to my rheumatologist, and they said, okay, look, it's time again, let's start over. It's time to do a full workup again. MRI, blood work, EMG, another spinal tap. I think by this time I was on number 6 or number 7. And there was a lot of concern with the presentation. At this time, they're thinking of amyloidosis. I had some previous workup a while ago, but they wanted to check again. And do I have a weird form of MS? Is this potentially ALS? They were concerned, and I was concerned. My wife was concerned, because everything we kept reading up on these symptoms pointed to some really ugly things. But they were also wondering, okay, is this CIDP? Let's get the EMG and the nerve conduction study going again, because something's not right. So this kind of gets me closer to where I am today. I eventually had the nerve conduction study again, and I had further regressions. All that blood work and the full workup we did, nothing came back on the blood. I had no protein chains in the spinal fluid and no indications of autoimmune presence. But my nerve conduction study and the slowing of response was 100% CIDP in this case, based on the neurologist's report. I was diagnosed at this point with atypical sensory CIDP, based on this results and not the associated lab work to follow up with the protein chains and the autoimmune items. We believe that there's probably something autoimmune going on, but we just don't know what that is. And it's probably yet to be diagnosed, and hopefully here in the future will be diagnosed. As we got this diagnosis and everything, it was time to simplify my medications. Okay, now you have the CIDP, let's get you on IVIG, which for anyone that has to take this approach, it's a hard process, and anyone should be prepared. It takes some time. Insurance, and depending on how your insurance works, may make it even harder. You have to understand a lot of different aspects to this. Do you have a specialty pharmacy you have to go through? Do you have to go through the medical? Do you go through this? So I had to learn the ropes, and unfortunately it took a little bit longer than we expected to get approval, but eventually I did. So every 3 weeks I'm on Gamunex C. I'm doing 1,000 milligrams per kilogram. I'm actually one of the lucky ones in this case. I respond to my Gamunex C perfectly. I do one pre-treatment. I take some Zofran because I get a little bit of nausea, but for the most part, I take it at a very high rate and I tolerate it very well. No headaches, no after effects. I actually go to work in the morning, I go do my infusion, and I go right back to work with no problems at all. I'm lucky in this case. But occasionally I do need the steroids to help tamper things down. If I get a flu, if I get an illness, if I get sick in any way, and this has occurred since I've been on the IVIG treatment, I get a flare. And we use the high dose steroids to get that under control, and it works very well. I'm still on the Plaquenil, and eventually we'll probably be tapering off that. And I'm still on my hormone replacement because since 2012, that's something that has never been rectified. I need the replacement therapy. I'm on an H1, H2 blocker. This is something I've been on for a long time because of this hydrotic eczema and allergy issues. And the supplements I take today to help keep things under control is our alpha lipoic acid. I'm on a probiotic with Lactobacillus helveticus. This is a probiotic that is known to help people with an autoimmune presence, CIDP. I'm on B2, B12, D3, and folate. So as we look at my story, I've been through a lot, but I'm actually stabilized now. I'm actually better. And for once, having the right diagnosis with the right treatment, I'm in a better place. I'm actually seeing improvements. I'm glad to say the sensations kind of are on hold and only start to escalate when I'm close to needing another treatment. And, overall, I have a lot of hope, and I'm okay with who I am right now. I'm back to riding on bikes again, which I haven't done in a long time. So as we look back, what was overlooked? And you probably heard this quite a bit. I kept explaining electric shock sensations. And this is the hard thing with dealing with any type of disease. You have these predominant symptoms, and it sometimes allows other symptoms to be overlooked. As I say in the bottom, it's easy to look back, but it's better to see how it ties to where you are now. As I look at many things prior, so many things have improved. I'm at the point now where I haven't had a vasovagal episode since I've been on high dose steroids or the IVIG. But now we know about the body stiffness. We know the relation to body pain. We understand that the GI is tied to the small fiber, and all these escalating fatigues is tied to both diseases. So we're kind of back to the beginning, and this is my biggest point of the story and what I kind of tell everyone. There has been many versions of me, and I've had to learn to accept each one so I could learn to thrive as the new me. And I hope for all of you, you can find that in yourself through your journeys and your struggles to find your place. Thank you. I appreciate y'all listening to my story.
Thanks, John. What an unbelievable trek you have gone through.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, So one of the questions is astonishing persistence, and I totally agree. Any spiritual support?
Yes. So I have my personal beliefs, but I also have the beliefs of my family. And believe it or not, there's many, even at work, that came to support me through this. So the one gentleman I was on the phone with actually came to my house several times and asked, can he pray on my behalf? And trust me, when you're going through something this severe and life-changing, you grab onto anything and everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
John, I think you've told me before that you did call up Bev, right? When you first found the Western Neuropathy Association?
Yes, I did. I remember right after I got the diagnosis for small fiber, one of the websites actually pointed me to the Houston group, and I got in contact actually with Catherine. Had some great emails back and forth, and you put me on one of Bev's conference calls. And Bev couldn't show up, but I kind of shared my story with someone at that deal, and they said, okay, can I get your information? Is it okay if I give it to someone so we can set up a call? And I remember I got Bev's information. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know who Bev was at the time, but I gave her a call and we talked. And one of the things is, okay, is there some type of hereditary component? Bev's condition being hereditary, she wanted to kind of tell me her story. And what was great is she spent time listening to my story and said, okay, think about these things, go look at this. And I think the biggest thing I felt from that, and part of the reason I'm part of the Western Neuropathy Association, is I felt like I found my people that could understand what I was going through, and people that could understand the trials and how hard this is. You know, my wife tries to, my kids try to, my friends try to, but until someone's gone through it's really hard to feel that they have the empathy of what you went through.
Yes, and John does a really great job now giving back to the group. And he has made personal contact with some people in the group that he's really seen that have been suffering, and has tried to help him through his experiences. So John's really our perfect example of, he's come this far with helping them himself. He's kind of got stable, and now he's helping others.
Yeah, and one of the biggest points, and this goes for any of us with any type of disease, it's depressing. It's hard. It's to learn to cope with it is not an easy task, and it's okay to feel that way. And I tell that to people when they say, I'm depressed, I'm upset, I cry. That's okay. It's part of the process, and we will all be there. But through that, okay, grab onto the pieces that you can live with, grab onto the pieces that you can generate hope, and find the new you and thrive with that person.
Right. John, we didn't really have too many questions for you, but we had so many people comment on your journey, on your struggle, on your persistence. And you know, that is something that everybody's always said about that. And then, you know, I always like to comment, John didn't say this time, but when he would talk about your kids with the beating up on you too, right?
Yeah, that was when pain was at the worst. The Lyrica wasn't working, the medications, the baclofen, nothing was helping. And I called it beating therapy, where literally my kids would beat me to make my pain so bad I would get euphoric relief. And that was the only way I made it up until we found the Solumedrol, and that helped. But before that, that's the only relief I got.
Wow. Yeah, really. And then of course we always get in the group, you know, our little humor bit when John's talking about EMGs. I love those shocks.
I do.
You know, please give me some more. Everybody else is going, stay away, stay away. And John's going, oh, Oh, I live for oh,
Yeah, but the only problem is I have this little problem with needles.
yeah.
So
John wants to try acupuncture.
I'm going
And
to do it.
you're going to do it. See, this is what he's been saying for months now. I'm going to do it. But he does think about needles.
Yeah, no, I'm at the point where I'm doing a little bit more methodical approach. I'm trying to make sure I don't have too many things in the mix because I want to really know what works and what doesn't work. And right now, the medication treatment is the focus. So I don't want to add other things to the mix. This is kind of my engineering brain and the methodical pieces because I don't want mistaken this works, but it's actually something else.
Something else.
So that's also something I learned with my struggles back in 2012 is take it slow and don't add too many things to the mix because you may miss the right one.
The other thing I want to talk about is just the other day, we were talking about magnesium. Was that yesterday too? What were we talking? Okay, I'm sure we have different people here today, but and you've talked about that before about the lotion that you put on at night to help with your feet too.
Yeah, I use it on my legs and feet, especially when things were real bad. And you know, if I have a little bit more stiffness, I got a percussion massager now, so the kids don't have to beat me. But my stuff's a little bit more localized and it's very minor. So I use Solumag. It's a more of a oil-based type magnesium formulation, and I use that as I'm doing the massaging. It works real well. It makes it easier also.
Well, I want to thank you very much for telling your story because I asked you to do this a while back. Both
Yeah,
of you.
and I appreciate the encouragement to do it because I've never really said my whole story to the group or really shared it with a lot of people. They know bits and pieces, but it was a struggle. And I just hope others can find hope through my story. And I just continue to share and try to bring hope to others.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John, very much.
So I have spent part of John's presentation time trying to clean up the wheel of names.
Okay, here we go.
Are y'all ready? All right.
Yep.
Okay, well, of course I said, are you ready?
Here we go.
A lot fewer names on it now, right?
Yes,
Are
yes.
you ready for that to spin?
Well, yeah, we'll see. I'm going to take away yours and I'm going to
Okay.
put mine and I'm going to
Alright.
put it on and I'm going to make it go full screen. Okay. So doesn't it look like we've got
They
less?
look better. They look better.
See it look, and I hope we haven't had too many people leave in the time, but it's still 45. So, all right. So let's see what's going to happen. Okay.
Lisa.
Lisa,
Lisa,
are you still
She
here?
is there. Yes, she is.
There. Yes. Yay, Lisa. Lisa is one of our newer group members, and Lisa is from Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Michigan, something. She's way up there to the north. Okay, one more. I mean, two more, actually. Next one. Rick.
Rick.
Rick from Houston, I think. And Rick just made a very nice donation to us also.
He did. Yes. Rick is here. So thank you, Rick.
Hey, Rick,
great, Rick.
you get
One
to,
more.
Oh, I didn't take him out. Well, he can't win again. Okay. We all know he just won. Okay. Oh, is it gonna go to Dana or is it gonna go? Oh, it's going to Ella.
Ela.
All these. Ella's still here? Still
Let's
here?
see. Yes.
Yes,
She is still on. Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so that is
Cool.
our 3.
Awesome.
All right.
I hope you wrote those down because I didn't write those down.
I
So,
did.
And again, you can stick which book you want in the chat so that people will know and send your addresses privately in the chat over.
If you're a member, we probably have your address. So
Yep.
it's just if you're a non-member.
Yeah,
Just-
if you're a brand new attendee and we don't have you in our
right.
system yet, please send us your contact info and we will mail your book of choice out to you.
plus the
Okay.
chicken soup for the soul for
Yes.
teachers.
Yes,
plus
you'll get
a
a good
little-
old,
a little
Yes.
thingy.
yes, you're gonna get a care
Okay.
package.
Right. Rick is asking for the You Can Cope with Peripheral Neuropathy.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
one-
Coping
oh,
book.
and one other thing, John, Barbara stuck in the chat about, can you spell that lotion? So if you want to throw that in.
Yeah. I'm actually trying to find the Amazon link because I've shared it before, but when I
Mhm.
brought it up, it's not there.
Oh, it's not
Uh-oh.
there. Isn't that funny?
So what this is, it's a magnesium oil or a magnesium massage oil, but it used to be called Solumag, but I do not see it on Amazon anymore. So once again, as I always say, if you're going to go into something like this, because you are going to absorb the magnesium, make sure you get with your doctor and they could probably give you some recommendations.
So was that SOLUMAG? Was that would be how you spell it? Yes.
That's how it used to be. And I've shared the link with the group before, but it did not come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so then that means we're coming to the almost end to find out our final numbers, Lindsay.
Yes, I know. It's so exciting. So first I want to say thank you to everybody that was able to donate over the weekend. I do a couple shout outs. I mean, Texas really just keeps blowing me out of the water with your donations. So you guys really showed up this weekend and I can't thank you guys enough for your donations. We got a couple others, we got some outliers. We got North Carolina, Pennsylvania, some more Texas, all over the Bay Area, Sacramento, up in the foothills as well. So we got a lot of people participating from all over. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But in our grand total, we met and surpassed our $3,000 goal.
Yay.
So as
There we
of right
go.
now,
On there, what
hit-
the grand total was. So what
We
is our
got
grand total?
3250 was our grand total.
32.50.
Yes. So
Fantastic.
yes. So
Very
yay. So beyond Kathy's donation, we were able to drum up, another what?
2,250.
Yeah, very
Yes.
good.
So
Yeah, so-
fantastic.
Yeah, so Kathy, thank you so much for starting this in the first place, because honestly, I don't think I would have thought of doing fundraising through this. So
Yeah, this was
worked
great.
out.
Wonderful,
Excellent.
wonderful.
Very good.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Yes,
And
thank you,
everybody
Kathy.
else.
Everybody, yeah, you guys did it. Like we really showed Kathy the score, what you guys can do. So
Yes,
Yeah.
very good.
and
Very
yeah,
good.
it doesn't just stop with today. Of course, we take donations all year round. The website always has that donation page available. You can donate when you renew your membership as well. And I will say that along with some of the donations, we got a couple new members that joined. So I love to see it.
That is great to hear.
They're going to be included
Very
in
good.
all of our new updates and any newsletters we send out and email blasts and upcoming webinars that we do. So yay, that's all
Yay.
good news.
Yay. And we do send out newsletters every month. So yes,
Yes.
yes. Okay, awesome. Okay, so
Okay, now I'm gonna try finishing up here.
So that looks kind of funny. I don't know what happened to it, but it's only this little bitty skinny line that we see, or maybe that I
Really?
see. Does everybody else see something?
Now I'm seeing the same thing, but we'll
Really?
bring
That's
it.
really
We'll do
odd,
it.
because, all right, let's try it again, because I'm
Yes.
seeing the whole screen.
No, I mean, and this is what happened when you did it before.
It did, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, now I don't see anything.
I mean, it's supposed to be that slide because it's got the right heading on it.
Exactly.
Well, you can just read what it says.
Oh, of course. And so,
Oh, there it is.
there, I don't know what happened there. So I hope everyone has had an opportunity to hear and see a lot of things that were helpful and that might provide some education and some definite hope and some guidance in terms of your day-to-day dealing with peripheral neuropathy. We are very grateful that you participated, and we are very grateful that you are members of our organization. I want to thank you for attending our annual conference, and we look forward to next year's annual conference and for you to return to our conference next year. So please continue your peripheral neuropathy journey with us by connecting on our support groups. And we have the virtual support groups, so anywhere you are in the country, you can join any one of the support groups. So we want to encourage you to do that. And then, of course, you can use the website or the web link that's right there in front of you to access the full list. On behalf of the board of directors and anyone else wants to mention anything, I really wish to say thank you again. And remember, please stay for the pop-up survey.
Yes.
Yep, that'll pop up when you leave. Before you leave, you'll see a little window that pops up when you leave the webinar. So take a couple minutes. It's only 3 questions and it's really fast, but it makes a big difference for us for future webinars.
Mhm. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lillian. Okay.
All right.
The last
All
one.
right.
Thank you.
And remember, we hope to see more of you, in addition to the people who come all the time to the support groups, the virtual support groups. Next one's going to be this Wednesday.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And
Perfect.
yes, that's right. And you can find the link for that is on the website. And for those of you that usually come anyway, I always send out advance notice of those with the direct links on them.
And if you missed anything from this weekend, or if you weren't able to make it, we're going to have all these recordings available, and I will send that out via email so you guys can get all the YouTube links. And I'm hoping I should be able to do that by next Friday. So
Okay.
keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
All right.
Everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much, everybody.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Yes.
Yes, and we'll see
Enjoy.
you all soon.
Yes. All right. Thanks,
Bye.
you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.